Well, welcome, and we thank you all for joining us today. I want to pause for a moment and join in with the nation in the mourning of the passing of President George H.W. Bush, who we will be honoring his legacy and service to the country. President Bush demonstrated courage, leadership, and dedication throughout his life, and since we are talking about baseball today, it's only fitting that we honor President Bush and our strong connection to Wichita, because when our Wichita State Shockers won the national title, President H.W. Bush was the president in office that they had the honor to go in and meet. And so we do have a great connection with our President Bush, President number 41, and certainly with baseball, and it's very fitting that we honor him. We'll remind people that at least city offices will be open on Wednesday. The majority of the offices that have been closed are ones declared by the federal government and then by the state government, and so many of our local offices will remain open on Wednesday, but we truly honor a great president and a great leader and someone who had dedicated their entire life to bettering our country and that has a strong connection to Wichita. So with that being said, we will call the meeting to order, and with us this morning we have Reverend Garrett from the Open Door Homeless Resource Center that will provide an invocation, and following the invocation we will have a Pledge of Allegiance, and we invite all of you to join us for both of those. Reverend Garrett, it's great to have you this morning.
Let us all be in the attitude of prayer. Most gracious Father, we come now to say thank you, Lord, for this day. Thank you, dear God, for allowing us to be here to gather in your name. We ask that your presence be with us, to protect us, to give us the wisdom we need, Lord God, to be great representatives for every district. We ask, oh Heavenly Father, that you touch every soul here, oh Heavenly Father. Touch those that are on the city council committee, oh Heavenly Father. Touch their families. Bless them, oh God. We ask, oh Heavenly Father, that you use us today, oh God, to work collaboratively together, dear God, to find ways to better represent the communities here, to better represent our government, oh Heavenly Father. Just do a great work amongst us today, oh God. Bring us together in unity. We thank you, Lord, for what you're doing in this place, for what you've already done. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Reverend Garrett, thank you so much. And we appreciate the great work that you do in our community. Thank you for helping us this morning kick off our meeting. We have approval of the minutes of November 27th, 2018. Any changes or corrections? Seeing none, I move that we approve the meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any questions? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. I would invite our friends from the Kansas Leadership Center to join me, and they have a special award and presentation they want to make. Good to have you this morning. We'll just turn the podium over to you. How about that?
Wonderful. Mr. Mayor, thank you. Council members, thank you. I'm pleased today to be here on behalf of the Kansas Leadership Center. My name is Ed O'Malley, serve as the president and CEO of the Kansas Leadership Center. I'm happy to be here today to announce the awarding of a Leadership Transformation Grant to the City of Wichita. This is the fourth consecutive year the city government has received this award. That's a record in the state of Kansas for these grants, and we're so pleased with the partnership. The Kansas Leadership Center provides leadership transformation grants to communities, organizations all across the state to help create cultures of leadership among staff and partners within organizations and institutions. And we're so pleased and proud of this partnership with the city of Wichita. The goal with these grants is to build the capacity of city workers to take initiative, to have the courage and the skill to intervene, to solve tough problems and seize opportunities. Over the years, hundreds of city staff members have participated in this training, and we're pleased and proud to continue that partnership. We have tremendous pride in the city of Wichita. We're proud that our headquarters is here in downtown. We're proud that we bring in Kansans from all across the state and people well beyond the borders of Kansas to Wichita, Kansas, and they speak with pride, Mr. Mayor. They speak with pride about this great city, and we're so proud to be a small part of your phenomenal efforts here in the city government. I have a certificate here that I'll leave with the city manager to provide for the city that awards this grant. We're looking forward to the continuation of this partnership. Thank you very much.
Well, we truly appreciate the partnership with the Kansas Leadership Center and their endeavors to help us cultivate leadership is always a good thing. Madam Clerk, you want to call the next item, please?
Lucy and Roden, support of the Wichita Police Department.
Lucian available this morning? So it looks like she had a hiccup getting here, and we will move on to the next agenda item.
Consent agenda items 1 through 17.
Are there any items that need to be pulled in the consent for clarification or discussion? Seeing none, I would move that we approve consent agenda items 1 through 17.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions? Cast your vote.
Councilmember Meissner, would you cast your vote, please?
He left.
Oh, sorry.
Motion passes 6-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Board of Bids and Contracts.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. Melinda Walker, Purchasing Manager. First item for engineering is a stormwater drain number 441 to serve South Fork Commercial Addition. We're going to defer to December 10th. We have paving Michelle, Cherry Creek, Casabella, Second Edition, Conspec, $144,806.20. We have the Cheney Pump Station pavement replacement and repair, Pearson Construction, for $248,577. For paving Venice, Sienna Lake Second Edition, Conspec, $208,953.20. For the 2018 sanitary sewer reconstruction phase 9, Dutton Construction, $105,482. We have a redirect from our trees and ornamental shade for Johnson's Garden Center, Group 6, $3,450, Group 11, and Group 12. We have a self-propelled mechanical street sweeper, Berry Tractor and Equipment, the base bid of $213,900 with options 3, 6, 7, 8, and 10 for $46,875. To install the picnic shelters at Chisholm Park, we have Compton Construction, $67,878. O.J. Watson, Park Concession Building Remodel, Compton Construction, base bid of $86,200 with alternates 1, 2, and 3 for $24,875. For a pusher ejector trailer, Warren Equipment, $79,900. We have a 19,500 GVWR crew cabin chassis, Don Hatton Chevrolet, base bid of $51,000, Option 1, $138,700. For the C12 evaporator replacement, it's deferred to December 10th. Sweeping parking lots and garages, NCPM Inc. Is for $48,250. And for two-way portable radios, utilizing a cooperative contract for the state of Kansas, Motorola Solutions for the police, $202,026.62. For fire, $994,769.84. And approve the bid award as recommended.
Anyone have any questions? So we're glad that we still continue to have sums of money to be able to make all these purchases at the end of the year. Are you trying to spend your entire piggy bank?
No.
I would move that we accept the award of bids.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions? Cast your vote. Motion passes 6-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Repair or removal of dangerous and unsafe structures, 528 North Pennsylvania Avenue and 1239 North Minnesota Avenue.
Good morning, Mayor and Council members. I'm Kaylin Nethercott with MABCD. We come before you for unfinished business. On August 21st, 2018, there we go. After a public hearing to consider condemnation of dangerous and unsafe structure, the council voted to defer action on the properties at 528 North Pennsylvania and 1239 North Minnesota, respectively, and granted 90 days for the properties to be brought into code compliance. 529 North Pennsylvania. Neighborhood inspection has had various nuisance cases on this property for many years. There's been housing cases for the last 3 years, emergency board-ups, nuisance, and tall grass and weeds cases on the property dating back to 2009. The property was heavily damaged by fire in February 2016. In the past 5 years, there have been 8 reported police incidents at this location. The 2014, 2015, 2016, and 17 taxes are delinquent in the amount of $972.02. There have been 8 reported no significant repairs have been made. Currently, there's bulky waste on the property, and the front and back tours to the home are unsecured. Deb Legg and I did look at this property yesterday. There is some noticeable activity of vagrant activity in the area. And I do believe that perhaps the owner's son is here to address Mayor and Council this morning.
Okay. Are there any questions at this point? Councilmember Johnson, how do you want to proceed forward?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd love to hear from the son about what's going on at the property and why we haven't seen any improvements.
So if we could ask that person to come to the podium.
Demetrius Andrews.
I'm sorry, go ahead and speak into the microphone.
Yeah, I'm Demetrius Andrews, Bessie's son, the one that owns the house.
And what's your address?
I don't live in Wichita.
Okay.
Just hadn't got around to finishing up, but was trying to ask for some more time.
So Councilmember Johnson obviously is the council member that's over this neighborhood, and I believe there's considerable frustration from staff, council members, and I'll let him speak for himself, but seeing nothing accomplished since the last time we held this hearing brings a little extra frustration, and when we can't even get a hold of the owners, and adds to that frustration. So I think I'll turn it over to Councilmember Johnson and let him ask you how you're going to address all of these problems.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I would like to hear your plan of action. Back in August, I did ask you, was 90 days enough time, and you said it was, and that we could get this property up to code. So what would be your plan of action that's different this time?
I was saying, like, 90 more days, if we could get about 90 more days and try to get it taken care of.
But what is your plan of action going forward, rather than just deferring this for another 90 days?
I'll be knocking the house down, trying to get it knocked down, clean it up.
For me, it's just tough because, you know, we did hear this in August, and we haven't seen any noticeable improvement since then. And in fact, we see more dumping and other things there. So I guess my frustration is that nothing has been done, and I'm not sure that during the winter and these cold months we'll see much happen in 90 days.
Oh, I think we can get it about 90 days, clean it up.
So has there been some additional decay in this last 90 days?
There's been some additional.
Let me ask staff a question. So has there been some additional issues involving this property in the past 90 days?
There appears to be more dumping on the property, more signs of vagrant activity. A couple more windows were broken out. We did, like I said, we looked at it yesterday. There's not been any positive changes to it. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Anything else you would like to add to help your case here?
Other than just allow me to get a little bit more time to clean it up.
So are you planning on staying in Wichita and doing this work yourself?
Yes. Yes, sir.
And where do you currently live?
Pauls Valley, Oklahoma.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Pauls Valley, Oklahoma.
Okay. All right. And Brandon, is there anything else you need from him?
No, sir.
All right. Well, thank you for testifying.
All right. Thank you.
So, Councilmember Johnson, how do you want to proceed?
You know, it's just tough because we haven't seen any real progress at that property, and it's a real concern for me to the community there with the hole in the roof, folks going in and out of there.
So it certainly causes issues in the neighborhood, and what frustrates many of the people in the neighborhood is it impacts their properties too.
Yeah.
It certainly takes away from those that are trying to do more in the neighborhoods and invest in their properties. And I guess the most frustrating part is until we're ready to actually bring condemnation to this, we never hear from the property owners.
Yep.
And so we went an entire 90 days without hearing from the property owners until you're ready to do condemnation, and why they aren't receptive to having those communications during that time, I suppose, adds to the frustration. So I think we're looking to following your lead. It's your district. You directly are impacted. This is your neighborhoods that you represent, so you tell us how you want to proceed.
On this structure, 528 North Pennsylvania, I'd like to take the staff recommended action.
And I would second that. So we have a motion to take the staff recommended action. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, cast your vote. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you. The second property is located at 1239 North Minnesota. Neighborhood inspection has had various housing nuisance and tall grass and weeds cases on this property since 2007. All attempts to gain compliance, including pursuing the case through court, have failed. The structure was damaged by fire in August 2011. There have been no reported police incidents in the last 5 years. The 2017 taxes are delinquent in the amount of $263.60. And there is a special assessment for lot cleanup for 2018 in the amount of $814.29. No repairs have been made. The structure is secure with the exception of the crawl space. There's tall grass and weeds on the premises. Deb and I did look at this property yesterday, and there have been no changes since these photographs were taken on November 13th. This property does have a local owner listed. All attempts to contact him have failed. We believe that possibly he may be deceased. We have notes in our file to that effect, but we've not been able to confirm that.
Any questions? So, Councilmember Johnson, how do you want to proceed?
This was tough. There was a gentleman who was trying to get this developed. There were some heirs that he had spoke with, but due to a conflict, was not able to get anything done with this property. So with that.
Well, is there anyone here that would like to speak on come to the podium, share your name, address.
Good morning. I'm Warren Piles, and I had been looking at this property and wanting to get it up to code, and I didn't get a chance to do it last time it was recommended. And I'm wanting to get that chance now with the city's involvement to get this deed over. I can get this up to code and in a timely manner.
Are you familiar with the owners of the property?
Yes, I am. I had been in talks with them to purchase it, and originally it was my cousin's. He was on his deathbed, and it got sold in a tax sale to my neighbor. Now my neighbor died. Then his mother took over. Then she died. And then his sister was trying to sell it to me. And now the sister and the brother are barking at each other for...
So that's 3 for 3. Are you sure you want to own this property?
Well, they never really had the property. They don't know nothing about the property other than they want to get rid of it. They want to sell it to me. But they haven't been able to come to terms themselves. They don't know nothing about this property. They just want to get rid of it.
Are you familiar where the deed of the property resides at this point in time?
The deed of the property would be between... It was changing over from my cousin, from James to John. It was changing over there. And that process was still going through hands, and an attorney had it held up. Nobody could do nothing with it until the attorney let it go, and the attorney was in and out of town, and it was a bunch of back and forth going on.
So how much damage has the fire done to the property?
It's no structural damage. It's some siding, some the inside of the sheetrock and stuff. That's been gutted. And previously, the previous owner, I permitted the property so he could get started on rehabbing. And we were in talks. He was selling it to me. It never happened because he died. And then turned around, like I said, his mother took it over. Then she died. And I was in talks with the mother to purchase it also. So it's been ongoing thing. I could never put my hands on it for whatever reason. So now I'm here today to see if I can put my hands on it. I'll get it up to code. I'll make sure it's not a nuisance no more.
So Robert, in situations where it's difficult to navigate the deed of the property, do we have staff people that can help navigate that? Don't we actually either offer that as a service, or there's people in the community that offer that as a service to help with property titles?
Mayor, that's actually something we've had a lot of discussion about over the last few years, because that is one of the major impediments to rehabbing dilapidated or blighted structures. And we have not identified a good tool for doing that. I think we've had some assistance through Kansas Legal Services, but in terms of an ongoing program at the city level, we do not have anything set up at this time.
So because of circumstances, Councilmember Johnson, I suppose I would encourage you to try and help navigate that title to this property and see if this is one we can save, since we have an eager person. So I'll just a suggestion, let you decide how you want to proceed forward.
Thanks, Mayor. Mr. Piles, as we kind of talked about this in August. I would hope that you really can get a hold of these family members and get an agreement to make this happen, because I'm happy to defer this today, but that structure is a safety hazard. And in 90 days, if we don't have some progress on that, I won't defer it again.
Okay, you want me to?
I was just letting you know, because I said I wouldn't defer this again. And there was a developer working on this and talked with those heirs already. But since you feel like you can work with them and you might know
I'm gonna give it my best shot.
them, but in 90 days, I will not defer this anymore and we'll move to demolish this property. I just wanted to let you know that.
So Councilmember Johnson, let me suggest this and see if this might be appropriate.
Okay.
We have in the past heard motions made where staff simply follows this process closely, and if staff's not satisfied that there's any progress being made to obviously get us to the end result of potentially saving this property, then we proceed with condemnation. It doesn't need to necessarily come back to us as a governing body.
Okay. Well, I like that. So, Jennifer, how would I word that motion?
Councilmember, you can make a motion to defer the matter until staff has an additional recommendation or finds that progress has been made. If no action is necessary, it does need to come back for a vote. If that's your answer, if that's the direction you'd like to take.
I would. I like that direction. So I would move that we defer this until staff can see some progress, or if not, then
Proceed with condemnation.
Proceed with condemnation.
At this point, you're giving staff 90 days to see that progress.
Yes.
I'll second that. Are there any other questions? Cast your vote.
Thank you.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thanks, Mayor.
Madam Clerk, are we ready for the next item? Thank you.
Public hearing and issuance of industrial revenue bonds, Textron Aviation.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Tim Goodpasture with the City's Office of Economic Development. For the record, this is the first of 6 items before you today regarding industrial revenue bonds, 4 of which will be for the actual issuance of bonds, 2 of which are requests for new letters of intent for new projects. The first item is for Textron Aviation. Textron is in the aerospace and advanced manufacturing sectors of the blueprint for regional economic growth. On February 13th of this year, the City Council approved a new letter of intent for an amount not to exceed $434,800,000 for the next 5 years for issuing bonds for Textron Aviation on a 5+5 year basis with a 100% property tax abatement. Each year, Textron will draw down against that $434 million letter of intent. In 2018, the company invested $91 million in Wichita. Approximately $70 million of that was for tooling and new machinery and equipment, and over $21 million was for real property improvements. These are just a couple of examples of some of the improvements that Textron has invested in Wichita in 2018. On the left, for the East Campus, the Beechcraft Campus, near Douglas and Webb Road. There's a new taxiway that was installed. You can see a before and after photo on the left, and a new chiller that was also installed at the East Campus. These are some investments that were made at the Pawnee Campus, which is near Pawnee and Woodlawn. On the left, you can see a former welding shop that was converted to what you see in the middle image there, where they have completely updated the facility and added new machinery and equipment. And on the right-hand side, you can see a new building addition for a chip briquetter. A cost-benefit analysis was conducted by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Wichita State, which showed an overall ratio of benefits to costs of 3.26 to 1 for the city. Therefore, it is the staff's recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing and place on first reading the bond ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of documents for the issuance of taxable industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $91 million, release and convey the 2016 bond finance property, and authorize the necessary signatures. Several folks from Textron Aviation are here: Maggie Topping, Stephanie Harder, and Steve Hall, who could answer any questions specific to the company, and I would be happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you. Any questions at this point? I would encourage us to think up some really difficult questions for Stephanie, because she often has the easy road. I'm here for you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench, and I will hand this off to one of the council members in those preceding districts, but let me just say thank you for investing in Wichita. We believe in Wichita, and it helps validate it that you believe in Wichita. And when you're wanting to spend $91 million, we think that's a significant investment in our community, because we have a community that's been proven that companies can operate successfully in the heartland of the country. And so again, thank you for investing, and I will turn this over to council members in those appropriate districts. 2, 3, or 4.
I'll go ahead and take it. I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing and place on the first reading on the bond ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of documents of the issuance of taxable industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $91 million, release and convey the 2016 bond finance property, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll save the tough questions for the next time Stephanie comes in front of us. If there's no other questions, cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Tell our friends at Textron thank you.
Mayor and City Council members, the next item is a request for the issuance of industrial revenue bonds for Edizazi Industries. Edizazi Industries was founded in 2008 in Wichita and initially offered programming services for computer numeric controlled, or CNC, machines for manufacturing. Since that time, they have added engineering, manufacturing, and assembly. The company is currently located at 2011 and 2101 East 21st Street. This is east of the Canal Route, or I-135, on 21st Street on the south side of the street. At the time that a letter of intent was approved, the company occupied 11,500 square feet and has since added 27,000 square feet for manufacturing and an additional 3,100 square feet for final assembly and storage. The company is now requesting the issuance of bonds in an amount not to exceed $7.5 million, $3.5 million for real property improvements, and $4 million for new machinery and equipment. On this aerial, you can see the areas outlined in orange. On the left, you can see the 3,100 square feet that was added for final assembly as well as storage. And on the right, you can see the 27,000 square feet that was added for manufacturing. These are a couple of images of the interior of the facilities. And this is a little bit of the outside of the facilities that were added on as part of this expansion project. At the time that the company was approved for the letter of intent to issue bonds, they had 30 employees and project that they will add 45 employees for a total of 75 employees with a minimum salary of $42,000 a year for the new jobs and a capital investment of $7.5 million. The company is qualified for a 100% property tax abatement on a 5+5 year basis. The estimate of the value of the property tax abatement on a 1-year basis based upon the capital investment in real property improvements is approximately $82,000 a year, $22,000 of which is the city's share of that. Edizazi is currently paying almost $10,000 in real property taxes. A cost-benefit analysis was conducted by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Wichita State University, which showed an overall ratio of 1.67 to 1 for the city of Wichita, 1.43 to 1 for the city's general fund, and 2.11 for the city's debt service fund. Therefore, it is the staff recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing and place on first reading the bond ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of documents for the issuance of taxable industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $7.5 million for Edizazi Industries Incorporated, and authorize the necessary signatures. I would be happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions for Tim on this one? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring the discussion back to the bench, and we appreciate the opportunity for this one to come forward, because too often we unfairly get the criticism that we're not helping small companies. And this company certainly fits that. But on top of that, they're a young company by certainly aviation standards, but they're a young, energetic, aggressive company that wants to add jobs, and oftentimes adding jobs coming from the community that they reside in, and we appreciate that. So thank you for your desire to grow, for your desire to improve the community around you. And this is a great opportunity for us to show that even though they only have 30 employees, they're going to more than double. It's a young, small company that we get to help invest in, that's eager to make a difference in our community. And I'll turn it over to Councilmember Johnson. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Blueball.
Thanks, Mayor. And I just wanted to kind of echo some of the same things that you were just saying. It's so exciting to be able to see a company like Edizazi come out here, and, it's the entrepreneurship that we really, got Wichita to where we are in the aviation business, and we don't see a lot of folks that are out there bold enough to do that. So I want to commend you guys on your growth, and it's exciting to see you guys in here, and every time we hear about how much you're growing, so congratulations.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to echo what both you and Councilmember Blueball said, and also add that Mr. Edizazi has invested in neighborhood associations as well, and reaches out to try to help folks in the surrounding community, so I appreciate that. With that, I would move that we take the staff recommended action.
I'll second that. And I have had the pleasure of traveling with Mr. Edizazi, and he is a wonderful person to spend some time with. So we, again, appreciate you. So we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Public hearing, issuance of industrial revenue bond, Shannon No. 2 LLC, Metal Fab, Inc.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, the next item is another request for the issuance of industrial revenue bonds for the benefit of Metal Fab. Shannon No. 2 LLC is a real estate holding entity that is owned by the Shannon family. The Shannon family also owns Metal Fab. Metal Fab was founded in 1958 in Wichita and manufactures heating, ventilation, and air conditioning and plumbing products here in Wichita. The company has two facilities here in Wichita, one at 3025 May, the other at 2009 Southwest Street. Those facilities are both outlined here in red. The one on the right is the May facility, and the one on the left is the West Street facility just north of Pawnee. On April 3rd of this year, the City Council approved a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds for the company to add 60,000 square feet to its West Street facility. The company is now requesting $2.1 million in industrial revenue bonds for the real property improvements that they have made to their West Street facility. In addition, the company is investing between $2.5 and $3 million in new machinery and equipment. This shows the facility on West Street just north of Pawnee. The company added 35,000 square feet on the south side of this facility and an additional 25,000 square feet on the north side of this facility. These are some of the images of the facility that has been added to the West Street facility. Metal Fab currently employs 273 employees in Wichita and projects it will add 15 new employees over the next 5 years at a minimum average salary of $42,000 a year. Based on the capital investment and job creation, the company qualifies for a 75% property tax abatement for the expansion project on a 5+5 year basis. The estimated value of the property tax abatement, the $75,000 property tax abatement annually, is approximately $37,000, approximately $10,000 of which would be the city's share. Metal Fab currently pays $150,000 in general taxes, and the new expansion project, since it will only be 75% abated, will add approximately $12,000 in new property taxes. A cost-benefit analysis was conducted by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Wichita State University, which showed an overall ratio of benefits to costs of 1.65 to 1 for the city, 1.50 to 1 for the city's general fund, and 1.56 to 1 for the city's debt service fund. Therefore, it's the staff's recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing and place on first reading the bond ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of documents for the issuance of taxable industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $2.1 million for Shannon No. 2 LLC, and authorize the necessary signatures. Sean Ray, who is in operations with Metal Fab, is here and can answer any questions specific to the company, and I would be happy to stand for any questions as well.
Thank you. Any questions at this point? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. And again, this is a family that has a history of investing in Wichita. I think they've obviously continued to expand their footprint in Wichita, and we appreciate that, and looking forward to more and more investment as they are successful. So I will turn this over to Councilmember Blueball.
Thank you, Mayor. And I did have the opportunity to tour their old facility as well as this new proposed facility this summer, and it's very exciting to learn a little bit of their history and how much they've grown and how much they continue to grow. So I'd like to take the recommended action to close the public hearing and place on first reading the bond ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of documents for the issuance of taxable industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $2.1 million for Shannon No. 2 LLC, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Public hearing and issuance of industrial revenue bonds, Sandstone Apartments, LLC.
Mayor and City Council members, next item before you is a request for the issuance of industrial revenue bonds for Sandstone Apartments. Sandstone Apartments is a real estate holding entity between Brent Hurst and the Murphin family. On July 10th of this year, the City Council approved a letter of intent not to exceed $5.8 million for the issuance of industrial revenue bonds. This was for the acquisition and renovation of the former Eastwood Apartments in southeast Wichita. The apartments are located near Kellogg and Oliver. It's actually south of Kellogg on Oliver, approximately 1 block south of Kellogg. You can see there's 6 buildings plus a commercial building that make up the former Eastwood Apartments. The Eastwood Apartments, are now Sandstone Apartments, are 118 units plus a 7,500 square foot commercial building that was built in the 1950s. The owner that Sandstone Apartments bought from had owned the property since the 1960s and had not invested in the property substantially for the last several years that it owned. As part of the acquisition of the Eastwood Apartments, the Sandstone Apartments group applied for low-income housing tax credits through the state of Kansas. They applied for 4% tax credits, which requires the use of industrial revenue bonds. The developers are intending to refurbish the apartment complex, including exterior and interior decking, new storm windows, repainting the facility, refinishing hardwood floors, new countertops throughout bathrooms and kitchens, new vanities, new fixtures, and new interior and exterior lighting, in addition to other improvements. These are just some of the photos of what the facility looks like at the time that Sandstone Apartments acquired it, and they are currently in the process of renovating the complex. The IRBs will be used for a sales tax exemption only. They are not used for a property tax abatement. The estimated value of the sales tax exemption is $90,000. The city's share of which is a little over $7,100. Bonds were initially going to be placed with Murphin Incorporated, but have since been decided to be placed with Sandstone Apartments LLC, the company that has acquired the property. A cost-benefit analysis was completed by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research, which showed an overall ratio of benefits to costs of 18.84 to 1, 12.43 to 1 for the city's general fund. Therefore, it is the staff's recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing and place on first reading the bond ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of documents for the issuance of industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $5.8 million for Sandstone Apartments LLC, and authorize the necessary signatures. I would be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions? Yes, Councilmember Clinton.
Tim.
Tim,
I apologize. Could you go back to slide 11 real quick? So it shows that there's nothing going. It's not affecting Wichita's debt service fund, because I've gotten a couple emails on this specific project, and I need to clear up that the city of Wichita is not issuing any debt for this project. We are not giving anybody any money for this project.
That is absolutely correct. All of the bond issues you've been hearing this morning that I have been presenting, there are no city dollars invested. There's no liability for the city. Most of these deals are structured, as you can see with this one. I mentioned that the bonds are being purchased by Sandstone Apartments. That is the developer. And so there are no city dollars at risk. There's no public dollars invested in this. In this particular project, all we have really supplied for them is a sales tax exemption, and they were required to utilize bonds that either had to be issued through the state or through the city, and they just chose to work through the city to do that.
I appreciate your explanation. I just needed to make sure that there was some clarification there. When we use industrial revenue bonds, we are not giving somebody the amount of money that the industrial revenue bonds are worth, and needed to make sure that was cleared up. Thank you.
Yep.
And we thank you for standing for questions, even though it was pretty brief. All right, anything else? Anyone in the audience like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. And it looks like the investors of Sandstone have done what they said they would do, so turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. This partnership between Brent Hurst and the Murphin Inc. has been actually extremely nice for Southeast Wichita. They do an amazing job at providing high quality, low cost housing to the public. Some pretty amazing stuff that they're doing, and so it's my pleasure to take the staff's recommended action.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Public hearing and request for a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds, IH2 LLC.
Mayor and City Council members, the next two items for you are a request for a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds for new projects from companies investing in the city of Wichita. The first of which is from IH2 LLC, which is part of the Iron Horse development, which is located at Seneca and MacArthur. In 2017, December of 2017, the City Council approved an amendment to its industrial revenue bond program for speculative industrial or flex space projects. The requirement was for industrial space that developers would have to build a minimum of 100,000 square feet that would not be divisible below 25,000 square feet, with a minimum of 28-foot clear height and a preference for tilt-up concrete. The requirements also included that the developer must start construction within 120 days of City Council approval and complete the project within 15 months of City Council approval. The developer would have to use industrial revenue bonds to achieve a 95% property tax abatement for the first 5 years and a 50% property tax abatement for the second 5 years if the property was at least half leased by the 5-year mark. IH2 LLC is a LLC that was recently formed by Jeff Lang. It will be the second industrial building in the Iron Horse manufacturing and warehousing project. The first building is 100,000 square feet that is currently leased to Hyperpet. And Jeff Lang with IH2 LLC is now requesting a new letter of intent not to exceed $6 million for a second building. Again, the project is located at the southwest corner of Seneca and MacArthur. This is essentially what the building layout would look like. The buildings in blue would be some retail or commercial space along Seneca, and the green and orange buildings would be industrial buildings that would be built in a phased project. The first building, the Hyperpet building, you can see there outlined with the black, and then outlined in red is where the new building would be for the new spec industrial building. This is what the first building looks like that was constructed at the Iron Horse project. The second building would have the same look. The value of a 100% property tax abatement would be at approximately $140,000 a year, with about $39,000 of that being the city's share. A cost-benefit analysis was conducted by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Wichita State University, which showed an overall ratio of benefits to costs of 1.37 to 1, 1.31 to 1 for the city's general fund, and 1.51 to 1 for the city's debt service fund. Therefore, it's the staff's recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing, adopt the resolution of intent, and authorize the necessary signatures. And I would be happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions for Tim? So Tim, you've got a great list of investments coming to us in this council meeting. What do you do the other 11 months out of the year?
Yeah, I want to see what he's going to do next week.
Is there anyone that'd like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. I know this is something that Councilmember Bluebaugh is excited to be a part of. It's been an ongoing process to encourage investment into all different parts of the city. And Councilmember Bluebaugh, I know you've worked really hard with this group of local investors in developing this, so happily turn this over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. And it is very exciting. You know, we've been seeing this through for a few years now, and it's changing the landscape down there in South Wichita, because I don't think we've ever seen a project this large before. So very excited to see some of the things happening down there. So I'd like to take staff's recommendation to close the public hearing, adopt the resolution of intent, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item.
For educational facility revenue bonds, Friends University.
Councilman Fry, I've been saving up all my projects for this meeting specifically, just to show off. The next item before you is a request for a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds from Friends University. Friends University is a Christian university in Wichita that was founded by the Quakers in 1898. The current enrollment for the university is approximately 1,600. Their primary facility, which is located here in Wichita, is located near Kellogg and Meridian. This area outlined in red and blue is the campus here in Wichita at Kellogg near Meridian. That is their campus here in Wichita. The university is requesting a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $5 million. Primarily, this is to refinance outstanding debt that they have with the Kansas Independent College Finance Authority, or KICFA, in an amount of $3,950,000. In addition to that, the university is going to install new turf at the Adair Austin Field at an approximate cost of $1 million and install a new boiler in the Davis Administration Building at an approximate cost of $50,000. The image on the left here is the field that will have the new turf installed, and the image on the right is the Davis Administration Building where the new boiler would be installed. The university has a sales tax exemption through the state of Kansas, and there is no property tax exemption being requested because the university is a 501c3 and therefore has a property tax exemption in its own right. Folston Siefken LLP will serve as Friends counsel, and Intrust Bank is going to purchase the bonds in this project. Therefore, it is the staff's recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing, adopt the resolution of intent, and authorize the necessary signatures. Dr. Amy Bragg Carey is here, as well as Vernon DeLiesel from the university. They can answer any questions specific to the university, and I would be happy to stand for any questions as well.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. And I know this is in District 4, but I know Councilmember Johnson has ties to this university and probably wants to jump in there too. But we're lucky that we have such great universities in our city, and this is a great example of a university that continues to invest in their community and provides some wonderful opportunities and recognized on the national level for some of their curriculum and programming that they do. So we're honored to have Friends continue to invest in our community, and I'll turn it over to Councilmember Blueball.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to say, myself as a 3-time graduate of Friends University, associate bachelor's and my master's from there, I'd proudly go ahead I'll go ahead and make this motion to close the public hearing, adopt the resolution of intent, and authorize necessary signatures.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. A very eager motion. Well done. Any questions? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
HPC 2018-58, Appeal of Wichita Historic Preservation Board Denial of Demolition Request of 430 East Douglas Avenue, listed as a contributing structure in the East Douglas Avenue Historic District, which is listed in the Wichita Register of Historic Places, the Register of Historic Kansas Places, and the National Register of Historic Places.
Dale Miller, planning staff. The application area is the one highlighted in the blue. As she indicated, the building is located at 430 East Douglas Avenue and is also 101 North Emporia. And then immediately to the west is a parking lot that's addressed as 420 and 422 East Douglas. The building is a contributing structure located within the East Douglas Avenue Historic District. The East Douglas Avenue Historic District is a triple listed district, meaning that it is on the Wichita, the Kansas, and the National Historic Registers, all three. A contributing structure is one that has been determined to be important to the district in which it is located, but for some reason has not been individually listed as an individual landmark. And that's the situation with the current building. It's contributing. It is not an individually designated landmark. The basis for that is that the original exterior of the building and the original windows were modified at some point in the past. The applicant proposes to demolish the building and to build a new building that would cover not only the site where the existing building is, but also cover the existing parking lot. Because the property is part of a multi-listed historic district, any project that requires a permit is required to be reviewed as to the project's impact on the historic integrity of the property. Specifically, the review is required to address the question of how the project will encroach, damage, or destroy the historic integrity of the property. The Historic Preservation Board is not allowed to take into account mitigating factors such as costs associated with the reuse of the existing building or conformance with broader community goals than just historic preservation. The project was submitted for review to the Historic Preservation Board on November 13th. And by definition, the demolition of a structure will nearly always result in a finding that the demolition will encroach, damage, or destroy the historic integrity of the historic resource. The board voted 3-1-2 to make such a finding that the project would encroach, damage, or destroy. The code, state law, allows for the applicant to appeal the findings of the Historic Preservation Board to the City Council. So that's how we get here. The applicant is asking the City Council to find that there are no prudent or feasible options to accomplish the project without demolition of the building. The applicant contends that to incorporate the existing building into the larger project, the floor plates of the existing building and the proposed new construction would not match, that they have a market study that indicates that the market can support a larger square footage building than is provided by the existing building at this location, and incorporating the existing building will require more expense due to footing and piling costs. And finally, that any tax credits revenue that they would obtain would not be sufficient to offset the increased construction costs. This is the building looking directly north from Douglas. Looking northwest, showing the Emporia Streets facade. And here is the site plan of the applicant's proposed project, and renderings of the proposed construction. So the council's options today are to support the Historic Preservation Board's denial and make a finding that the project will encroach, damage, or destroy the historic resource, or to make a finding that no prudent and feasible alternatives exist and make that finding based on the mismatching floor plates, the increased construction costs, and that demolition will further broader community redevelopment goals for the downtown. With that, I'll try and answer questions.
So did you say that these windows were upgraded before they listed the property on the historic?
No, all I said was the original windows aren't there, and that's part of the reason why it's contributing. I don't know when the windows were changed, but
they didn't go through the Historic Preservation Board when they changed the windows?
The Wichita designation was in 85, and so that work could have all occurred before 85. I don't really know when that occurred.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item?
Good morning, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Greg Kite. I'm a local attorney and president of the Historic Preservation Alliance of Wichita and Sedgwick County. It's a pleasure to be here today and visit with you about this very important issue. HPA, the Historic Preservation Alliance of Wichita and Sedgwick County, is a 501c3 not-for-profit corporation. Our mission very generally is to preserve and protect Wichita's history and heritage. We prepare historic register nominations, we write historic grant applications, we restore historic buildings and structures, and we collect historic artifacts and memorabilia, such as the very important items from Joyland Amusement Park. We have probably the largest collection of artifacts and memorabilia from Joyland Amusement Park here in Wichita. Beyond that, we don't let the city of Wichita or the Sedgwick County border prevent us from doing what we think is the right thing to do. We're in the process of acquiring and saving the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Train Depot in Stafford, Kansas, and we wrote the grant application to save and restore the Home on the Range cabin in Smith County. So our range is beyond the city limits of Wichita and the Sedgwick County line. And before I get started, let me kind of off the note here thank Mayor Longwell and Councilman Glendenin for your fabulous work with respect to the Starlight Drive-In Theater. I know that's a little bit beyond and above what your normal tasks are, but it's just as important as anything else you do, and the community thanks you very much for that work. That leads me then, of course, with respect to historic preservation, the preservation of our heritage and our history, to the East Douglas Historic District. And I believe HPA provided to you a packet of materials there that you've had an opportunity probably to review and whatnot. But to just simply summarize very briefly, there are 44, no less than 44 historic resources that are involved in this wonderful historic district, District 6, I believe. There's 36 contributing buildings and 5 contributing structures. A person can't put a price tag on your history and your heritage. It's not for sale. When it came to us acquiring items from Joyland Amusement Park, we did so as fast and as furiously as we could. Since that time, we have been approached many times by people wanting to acquire those artifacts, that memorabilia, things like the old woman's shoe, the horse and buggy ride, the old original ticket booth for the roller coaster, the 3/4 size stagecoach, and even the full-size Atchison Topeka Santa Fe train caboose. Those things are not for sale. Our history, our heritage is not for sale. In reviewing this particular project, it was originally brought before the city's Historic Preservation Board. The National Historic Register nomination was done on June the 7th, 2004, which was 14 years ago. The building was purchased by TGC Development Corporation a few months ago, according to the Wichita Eagle. So they bought it knowing full well it had triple registered designation and was an important part of the East Douglas Historic District in District 6. What was the understanding of and the appreciation for the Meads Corner building in particular and the historic district in particular? The owner of the building, according to the Wichita Eagle, and I quote, indicated, "It's an old building. It's a quote-unquote old building." I would submit it's a lot more than an old building. What's the applicant's options and alternatives incorporating the structure? Did we see that today? No. The applicant's options and alternatives avoiding demolition. Did we see that today? No. One final thought to leave with you today without belaboring this entire thing. This issue today raises a very dangerous precedent. A developer buying a triple historic registered property, not to be the caretaker, not to be the custodian of that property, but to demolish it. I would submit that is a very slippery slope to be on. Where do we end with that approach? I don't think that's been the approach of this city council in the past. I think this city council very much appreciates the history, the heritage of this town, and what makes Wichita what it is today. Mayor, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions from anyone?
Don't appear to be any. Any other speakers?
My name is Christopher Parasho. I live at 311 South Exposition. A couple of things that I attended the Historic Preservation Board meeting where this was rejected, and I'm asking that the City Council also reject the appeal. One of the issues that I had with the developer's plan was that they didn't seem to be trying to save the building in any way. The developer who's wanting to do this project is the same developer that is currently saving Spaghetti Works warehouse building. So they're capable of doing it if they wanted to. The question is, why don't they want to? One of the things that was cited both at the Historic Board and here also was that footing costs and things like that would drive the project to be too expensive. But they have to do the footings on the west end to protect a historic building that's also part of this same district. So if they were to build their building between the two buildings and not touch this building, the footing costs are already incorporated in half of the project at least. So I'm kind of curious as to why the eagerness is to destroy this building. And since it was home of Meade's Corner, the public, there's a big push from the public as far as wanting to try and save this. I know there was another business owner that wanted to try and come in and occupy this building after Meade's Corner left, and for whatever reason that business wasn't able to get into this building and begin business. So it's not like the building is just sitting there vacant. There is interest in people using it. It's just a matter of saving it and putting it to use. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Precho. Any questions for Mr. Precho? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Anyone else that would like to come forward and speak on this issue? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. Hello, my name's Dean Bradley. I'm an architect in Wichita. I live at 2860 Porter. My office has been downtown for 40 years at the Garvey Center, and I'm a member of the HPA organization as well as the Sedgwick County, Wichita-Sedgwick County Historical Museum, and I've been a lifelong resident of Wichita. I, as an architect, just want to say that it's our fabric of what we've lived with, and the landmarks that make up that fabric are important. And as an architect, if you have a restriction, sometimes your creative juices flow more, and you're able to do actually more creative things. So if the current developers could see beyond the square footage of the land value of that corner, and perhaps use the structure, maybe make the building next door taller to make up for loss of square footage, hang balconies over the structure, we might end up with a lot more interesting corner and part of that district. I'm just bringing it, and I don't know if you guys can see this, but this photograph from 1934 is looking west from that intersection of Emporia and Douglas. And the corner building is just barely shown here, and this is in 34, so it had the stucco done to it at that time. The next historic structure remaining is the Gallery 12 structure, the Roxy's building. And between there are 3 different buildings between the 2 that exist there now. And they're all of different varying sizes and types. And I just think that part of the character of our downtown, instead of a monolithic structure, might be better if it was broken down and let the Meade building remain. You guys see this up close. But, you know, with the variety of structures that could be maybe created, again, with sometimes limitations and requirements, you have a reason to do different than just a normal monolithic structure from street corner to street corner. And so I would certainly encourage the architects and the developers to consider some of the other options that are available to the solution, and our further appreciation of that district. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers?
Hello, I'm Kathy Camden. I live in District 1. I would like to start by reading a statement on behalf of Dr. Russell Fox. Dr. Fox is a political science professor at Friends University, and unfortunately he could not be in attendance today, but he did want to address the committee. This is what he had to say. There has been much talk of late about how Wichita is losing its commons. That's not the word usually used, to be sure. Instead, when Wichitans mourn Lawrence Dumont Stadium, expressed frustration at the closing of the Palace Theater, or watched with concern at the changes at Natsker Park, they talk about how these were all sites of fond memories, how they found and strengthened friendships at and through them, how in these places people could come together, interact, learn, engage in commerce, and have fun. To see them change or to close is felt as a loss of something once commonly held, but perhaps no longer. In a society where private property is basic to public life, the language of the common is rare. Still, it's not just public parks, Riverfest, open source software, or the Agalo Aquifer that should be considered common possessions. There are ways to describe those places, events, and things, including those which exist through privately owned businesses, that people lovingly organize their lives around and thus sometimes feel a claim to. But when claimants conflict, owners regularly hold the cards, as the noble but thus far failed attempts to keep the Starlight Drive-In alive demonstrate. Of course, private ownership doesn't always close off common resources and opportunities. Many owners build their businesses in ways that maximize openness to the public. Consider Wichita's independent bookstores. And the mingling of private investments with the goods is sometimes necessary. But still, a city that cares about its quality of life must attend to how certain business proposals and development decisions can have unexpectedly negative impacts on the commons, and when necessary, be willing to use creative means to limit those effects. The City Council will have the opportunity to weigh in on a private decision with potential commons, harmful consequences. The fate of the building on Douglas that for a decade housed Mead's Corner, a beloved coffee house ministry. Mead's was as good of an example of a business that was also a common as you can imagine. Unfortunately, it was forced to close when the property owner raised rents higher than First United Methodist could pay. When a local businesswoman developed plans to continue the coffee tradition in that location, it turned out that the ownership of the building had changed, and the new owner, a development company which has been a driving force in the controversial redesign of Natsker Park, just a block away, put that plan aside. Now the proposal is to raise the building and construct a 4-story commercial and residential complex in the place. Everyone likes new construction, right? Except the Historic Preservation Board has voted against that proposal, citing the disruption it would pose to the architectural integrity of the East Douglas Historic District. The council could go ahead and give approval, but I hope they don't, not at least without some commitments from the developers in question. You can't bring back Meads, of course. When common places are lost, they usually don't return. Instead, people organize their lives otherwise and make different memories. But the cost of such changes can be large. So one should, I think, use whatever means available, and a Historic Preservation Board certainly one such, to slow things down and to impress upon the owners just how needed, how rare, and how worthy of a public support the common spaces that they legally possess and they truly are. If a developer is more interested in rapid growth than common tending, well, that's their choice, but it shouldn't be one that gets an easy pass from those who represent us all. I would just like to agree with Dr. Fox, and also my concern is that there are 5 different lots that could be developed without demolishing this building. As other people have said, there are other alternatives that really haven't been looked at. Meads is still a viable building that could be used in retail space. They could still use that as part of the CID if they wanted. It's a functioning building, and it exists with 43 other buildings in that area. They're all intact, and they're all in a historic preservation area. There has to be there must be no prudent and feasible alternative in order to demolish that building. And the developer is not meeting that criteria. Therefore, I ask that you support and adopt the findings of the Historic Preservation Board and the city's recommendation to deny the developer's request. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
Janice Rich, 619 Greenwood in District 1. Our homes have just become an investment to flip in a few years so you can move into something newer. Just tear down old buildings to make new modern ones, or maybe a parking lot. Modern is not always the same as better. It's the consumer throwaway culture at its worst. It's the duty of the city's Historic Preservation Board to act on behalf of the Kansas State Historic Preservation Office to determine if the demolition of this building will encroach upon, damage, or destroy the integrity of the structures in the East Douglas Historic District. Yes, the demolition would damage the historic district, so the board did make the right decision. And I hope that you all, the mayor and council members, also will vote to deny the demolition permit because it's the right thing to do.
Thank you. Other speakers?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council members, City Manager, Jeff Fleur, 507 East Douglas Avenue. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the Downtown Wichita Board. The board was presented this project at its November meeting and discussed the various components of the project, and they have requested that we convey support of the proposed development. The board identified several positive attributes of the proposed project. Through the infill of 2 surface lots along Douglas, the project furthers an important design component outlined in Project Downtown: the strengthening of the connectivity, the walkability, and the vibrancy of Douglas Avenue. These surface lots have fronted Douglas for well over a decade. Since Project Downtown's adoption in 2010, we have seen the importance of infill projects along Douglas Avenue. The Kansas Leadership Center in Block 1. At the time of its construction, it was the first new building along Douglas Avenue in over 35 years. It was built approximately 5 years ago. The recently completed Cargill headquarters building, with a structure now that engages the street level of Douglas Avenue and Old Town, is very, very important to the urban fabric, not only of Douglas, but downtown as a whole. The current infill development happening at Spaghetti Works District, again, adjacent to NASCAR Park, taking a parking lot and now making it a viable use. All these projects are creating an increased vibrancy, if you will, along this very important downtown corridor. This project will provide ground floor activation of Douglas Avenue. The project will provide new spec Class A office space. This will help to enhance the marketing of our city, certainly beyond Wichita. It will also two-way Emporio Street. I believe the current scope is looking from Waterman to First. We have seen the transformation of St. Francis Street. It has undergone in the last 4 or 5 years, and certainly the vibrancy that has happened along that corridor for it becoming two-way. This project will also utilize existing parking infrastructure for spec office space, therefore not needing to build a new garage. The surface lots being implemented may certainly be viewed as potential development sites in the years to come. In the place of a single building's removal, there will be a significant transformation along Douglas Avenue. Thank you again for the opportunity to share these points from the Downtown Wichita Board.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Other speakers?
Mayor, members of the council, Corp Maxwell, Pulcinelli Law Firm, appearing today on behalf of TGC 125 LLC, the developer of the proposed project. I want to thank you all for taking up this action and this item in front of this board, and it is properly before the City Council for a hearing today. As you all know, the Historic Preservation Group voted 3-1-2 for if we were going to encroach or destroy historic elements, as they appropriately did, because of the fact that we are talking about a demolition of a building. But it's now before the council, and many have stated it, the council is the group that can look at the mitigating factors. And I would put 2 mitigating factors in front of this council, just as the Downtown Wichita Partnership did. First, it is the development of a 4-story, 70,000 square foot office building with over 60,000 square feet of Class A development and 10,000 square feet of Class A retail. As you saw from the pictures of the structure, and I'm not sure if I can bring it back, it's a building of significant size, scope, scale. It's appropriate, it's steel, it is brick. It looks excellent, and I believe will look excellent in this corridor and enhance this corridor. It also activates the street frontage and brings that to life. And really what we look at this as, what TGC looks at this is, and I have Quentin Ellis, the President of Construction and Development from TGC, with us here today. We look at it as a continuation of the successful partnership we began with the City of Wichita with the Spaghetti Works project, with the NAFSCR Park project. We did that project, as all know, we're well underway under that project. Steel is going up, construction is happening, and that was our sort of first chip in of trying to develop Class A mixed-use buildings in downtown Wichita. We think those are going to be gorgeous structures. We think it's going to substantially change for the better the characterization of NAFSCR Park, and importantly, we're also doing a historic renovation in that, the historic renovation of the Spaghetti Works property. So this developer does not like historic renovation. They're not against historic renovation. They want to focus on it, and they want to do it, and they want to do it when it's appropriate, and they want to be able to do it when it can be done, and it can be for the best of the community. So they very much embrace historic renovation. And they did it with this project. Unfortunately, for this specific site, it doesn't work. If we want to have this Class A development, if we want to have Class A office and we want it to develop, there is no feasible alternative on this site. It doesn't exist. And I can cite one very easy fact to support that, and that is the action items that are coming up after this if we're able to move through this fact. We are coming in front of this council for economic incentives. We have been negotiating hard with your economic development staff, with your city manager, and otherwise to make this project work. It is a thin project. It is not showing market returns. But Nick is committed to the project, wants to make it work, but we're having to use these tools to already get it to pencil and already be able to bring it forward so we can develop this Class A project. That in itself is the evidence. That's the evidence that there is no prudent and feasible alternative. If we want to develop Class A office on this site and Class A retail, and we want to have a mixed-use structure on this site, we have to demolish the Meads Corner building and move forward with this Class A development. And I would cite one more sort of component is the East Douglas Historic District is historic for the reason that it was the center of commerce in Wichita. And the very purpose of what we're doing here is trying to reinstill that, trying to reinvigorate that, trying to continue to make sure for the next 50 or 100 years that this will be the center of commerce in Wichita by developing Class A office space at this site. With that, Mayor, I'd stand for any questions.
Any questions? None.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
Good morning. Sharon Ferry, 323 North Market, Wichita, Kansas. As much as I like the idea of new Class A office space downtown, I don't feel that it has to be at the expense of the historic fabric of our city. The Meads Corner building, as a contributing structure in the East Douglas Historic District, is integral in letting developers use historic tax credits to redevelop buildings in that district. If we continue to lose these buildings, developers will finally lose this important gap financing option. The way to make sure we don't unnecessarily lose historic structures is to bring the planning department and the preservation planner on board earlier in the process. That way, all of the mitigating circumstances can truly be looked at regarding how our buildings that define who we are as a city can more likely be saved and incorporated into development plans as we bring in new infill development and not development that requires demolition. When the Historic Preservation Board receives development proposals after they are completely designed, it takes away a lot of our opportunity for our city and you as our council members to have win-win outcomes. We all want to make Wichita the best place it can be, but that means balancing everything and looking at the big picture. I hope that we can use this as a lesson. Insist that developers take their projects to the preservation planner early in the process. Insist that they present documentation, not just their own assessment, to the planner of why their project won't work without demolition. Insist that the integrity of historic districts and our historic belt environment are included in the process. As a preservation friend of mine once said, we are not trying to save all of the old buildings. We are just trying to save the ones we have left. Let's start working together in a more cooperative manner to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. And I neglected to say earlier that when we have former council members in the audience, we like to try and recognize them. And Sharon served on this council for 8 years, and we appreciate your service. And we also have former council member Greg Ferris that has joined us. I think he served on the bench for like 47 years before there were term limits. And one look at Greg and you'll know he's got some expertise in everything historical. Are there any other speakers? So, no other speakers. We will bring the discussion back to the bench. Discussion? So I'm happy to let Council Member Claycomb, who covers this district, to lead us in discussion and prompt some kind of conversations about the direction that she would like to see us go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a tough decision. I live in a historic district. I live in a 1920s warehouse that's been renovated, so I understand the value of these historical buildings. I think the thing that we're looking at on this project is, I think that our history is very important, but our history is not just buildings, and a vibrant downtown with office workers and retail is also part of our history. Even if you look at Mr. Bradley's picture, that really showed a vibrant downtown that I would imagine had lots of people and office workers and retail. And so I think this infill of 2 surface lots becomes very important to downtown and the development of downtown. So I'm ready to make a motion, Mr. Mayor, if no one else has any comments.
Any questions or concerns to share with Councilmember Claycomb? Don't appear to be any, so we're looking for you.
All right, so I move that we find there are no prudent and feasible alternatives to demolition of the 430 East Douglas Avenue and overturn the denial of the HPC 2018-0058. And this has to do with the mitigating factors of having to modify the floor plates. That's difficult, the additional costs of that, and that this demolition will provide further development of our downtown community. Is that what I need, Jennifer? Thank you.
I'll second. So we have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions or concerns to share? Seeing none, cast your vote. And the motion passes 6-1. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Public hearing for Community Improvement District Industrial Revenue Bonds and approval of development agreement with TGC 125 LLC regarding the development of Douglas and Emporia.
Good morning, Mayor. Scott Rigby, City Manager's Office, and also with the Economic Development Office. We're giving Tim a break on this item. Before you today is a proposal for a new development located at the corner of Emporia and Douglas. The proposal from the development team is proposing a new 4-story Class A office building. 60,000 square feet of that would be speculative office space on floors 2 to 4, and approximately 10,000 square feet of ground floor retail. The developer is also proposing to have a rooftop patio area as well. Redevelopment, the developer owns adjacent property, including this area, and would include surface parking as well. This is the site plan. Just one noticeable change to this is because it's a CID, you'll also see it includes the current city lot west of the hair business right there on the east side of Emporia and Douglas. That is not technically part of the new development. That will remain a city parcel. Here are some images of the proposal. 4-story brick-clad building, retail on the ground floor. We'll see rooftop elements as well. The public hearing today is regarding the developer has requested a community improvement district, which proposes a 2% additional sales tax for purchases within that district that would run for 22 years, and that the city would retain 10% of that CID revenue dedicated. Over the life of that would be estimated about $220,000. The developer has also requested the city consider the conversion of Emporia from one-way to two-way, and the CID would provide a portion of those funds to help for that conversion and maintenance of that conversion from one-way to two-way of Emporia. The maximum reimbursement for the life of the project would be approximately $2.2 million, not including the administration fee and the city's 10%. These are the CID boundaries. You'll see the items in green are the developer currently owned parcels. You'll see the outline red covers Emporia, but also goes down to the intersection of Douglas and goes west to the west boundary of their project. This is to allow for the city's portion to be utilized for that conversion of Emporia between First and Douglas. It also allows us, if we want to do improvements to the city lot west of Planet Heron Rain. The applicant is also asking for industrial revenue bonds for a sales tax exemption, estimated about $750,000, as well as a property tax abatement. On the office portion only, retail does not receive that abatement. The project will provide speculative office space, which I will note, and Greater Wichita Partnership can also note, if they were here, that we currently lack clean, new Class A office space. We know there's other businesses in the downtown, buildings in the downtown. We constantly market those properties, but we are hearing often that it's not quite the space that they're looking for. I think a note would be, if you look at the Cargill new facility, they were in the downtown in the existing building, but they decided they needed to do a new building with a new floor plate to provide that Class A office that they felt was more attractive to the town layout today. As part of this IRB requirement, they will be required to create at least 25 net new jobs at a value of 55,000 square feet, and that they will continue to pay a pilot for the existing property taxes on the properties at about $35,000. Additional request is for their purchase of the city lot on the east side of Emporia for $300,000, and that in addition, and this really came out of a discussion initially, they requested a new garage being built for this project. We respectively proposed an alternative was to use the surface lot as well as up to 100 parking spaces in the currently state office building garages across the street. That would begin at $30 a square feet. That increases over time, and as well as the request from converting Emporia from one-way to two-way. Our estimates with the city's engineering department, the conversion from First Street to Waterman, this actually should be $280,000. If you went to Second Street to Waterman, it would be the $350,000. A couple of the key developer milestones is to submit site and building plans for a building permit within 6 months of the effective date of this agreement. So for example, if the council decided to approve this agreement in the next week or so, we'd sign the agreements and that would start the clock. and then commencement of construction within 90 days of that building permit, and then construction complete within 24 months of the effective date. So if we just, for example, chose a January 1st effective date, they would have to be done by January 1st of 2021. Here's a cost-benefit analysis. As you'll see, City of Wichita, as well as our other partners, all are above the 1.3 to 1 requirement. Is therefore the staff's recommendation to close the public hearing, place the ordinance on the first reading, creating a CID, and adopt the resolution approving the development agreement and industrial revenue bonds for Douglas Emporio project, and authorize the necessary signatures. Stand for any questions.
Questions at this point? Seeing none, we'll go out. Oh, Councilmember Blueball.
Thank you. And Scott, you just sent me the real estate sales process for the acquisition of city property. And I was on that committee in 2014, and we've got the suggestion that $300,000 parking lot will be sold to this. Have we followed that sales process?
We have. So if you have it in front of you, it's called a conditional real estate, a streamlined request for proposal. Unless there's a unique situation, aspect of it. In this situation, the developer is in a unique position or competitive advantage by owning adjacent property. They own adjacent property to this. No different whether it's an alley or street, they have the adjacent property ownership. So we can choose to forego the RFP and go straight to a purchase and sale agreement.
Okay. Thank you.
No other questions? We'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Greg Ferris. I live at 144 South Bay Country Court in Wichita. I have clients that hire me to actually read the agenda every week, so every week I read the agenda and I stumbled on this item. Was curious, read it some more, called a few people. I am not being paid by any developer to be here today. I just need to make sure that you understand that. I'm concerned because you're really deviating from city policy. I think it's a dangerous slope that you're starting down. I do have clients that are developers. They are concerned that, and have been concerned in the past, that you treat downtown significantly different, but this goes way beyond. You did a lot of IRBs today, and I have no problem with IRBs. I think they're a good tool. We used them generally for manufacturing. You adopted a policy, a specific policy on how to do that with industrial warehousing because of the open need that the community has realized for warehousing. And I found it interesting that your policy for warehousing, you give a 95% exemption and then 50% for the last 5 years. You have no policy to give downtown office space exemption. Cargill is a unique example. We're not talking about a company that was definitely leaving town if they didn't get what they needed to be able to remain. So, you can't use Cargill as the same example, but, as I read through this, I see that you have IMA as the primary tenant of this property. And IMA is not leaving Wichita. I found it interesting in my conversations with council members yesterday that one of those people told me that IMA had been negotiating with somebody for a different piece of property that they were going to maybe locate on. Found that out from one of you, and boy, that would really concern me then if I was that individual. And now they're looking at being able to locate downtown. Look at your numbers, and they say they're $2.7 million worth of property tax exemptions. That's not 100% tax exemption on 6/7 of a $20 million building. That number's more like $5 million. $500,000 a year is what the taxes would be on a 7/8 or 6/7 of a 70,000 square foot facility that costs $20 million that you're doing IRBs on. So I think that, you're talking about some significant dollars here that this particular investor, and I don't know him either. He may be a great guy and a great investor, and that's all well and good. But investors have to compete against each other in an open marketplace like everybody else. And they don't get to come downtown and say, oh, I'm going to build a $20 million building, so city, this is an office building. We get office buildings everywhere. So I think you need to be very careful about granting 100% tax exemptions. I don't care about CIDs. If you guys want to give CIDs, those are great. People use those tools, and I have never had a problem with CIDs. But to grant spec office space and to grant office space to move from one facility to another certainly is bad policy. And the last thing I will tell you, if you take out the 196 jobs of IMA that we are retaining, which we're not, they're not going anywhere, so you're not retaining them. If you take out those 196 jobs, you will not come close to a 1.3 cost benefit analysis. So I would suggest you defer this, ask IMA, and if they tell you, hey, we're leaving town if you don't do this, that's a different story. Has anybody asked that question? I doubt it, because they'd have to maybe fudge some things to tell you they were leaving, because they, based on what I heard yesterday, they were going somewhere else before this happened. So I would ask them that question. I would get a better number of what the taxes are going to be. If is it 2.7 million, then cap it at that. That's all the property tax exemption they would get. Because I don't believe that's their numbers. I don't think that's the numbers they're counting on as far as tax exemptions. And I think you should just look at your policy in general and say, are we going to be giving office space, adopt a policy if that's what your policy can be, so everybody knows what it is. But just to come in and say, hey, I'm building a building, I'm moving somebody from the east side to downtown, and so we want 100% tax exemption. I don't think that's a good idea. I think you guys ought to think twice about that kind of a policy. Be glad to answer any questions. Don't have much
Questions for Mr. Ferris? Don't appear to be any. Thank you. Any other speakers?
Kathy Camden, District 1. You guys have heard me speak before on my opinion of the overusage of CIDs and tax abatements. I would echo what Mr. Ferris said. I think certain developers are getting preferential treatment, and this should be a competitive process. Just because a business owner wants to move into an area doesn't mean downtown they should automatically get all those benefits. Especially when this is prime location. This is in our booming area. This is not an underdeveloped area. This is an area that is prize property. It's from the arena. And I'm frustrated in the sense that I feel like they're not providing the information that they should be providing. I also question the numbers. I don't have the ability to know the numbers like Mr. Ferris does, but I thought they were off too, especially when we aren't losing those people. We're not losing these employees. The other thing is they still have failed to tell us who these retailers are that are going to be in the bottom floor. Many people on the council asked at the last meeting, and they did not provide that. And then for the people renting the upstairs, that was represented by the attorney, who again said that they could not provide who that was. So I feel like it's a lot of missing information, and you shouldn't make a decision based on all that. They're supposed to have 10,000 square feet of retail space. It'd be nice to have a grocery store down there. I doubt that they'll do that because it's not the most cost-effective way to make money. But I don't understand why CIDs are given out so freely. I think it's something that needs to be as an incentive to use in certain areas. I don't feel people should have to keep paying additional money to shop downtown. I don't think we should all keep getting charged another 2% tax because the businesses want to make some money off of it. And yeah, we're going to get a street redone, possibly, but again, that has not been something that has been verified that they are actually going to commit to, in my understanding, even today. And I think at the last meeting, they were asked to commit to that, and in the agenda and the documents, it still says that it could go to that, to repaving the streets. And as Mr. Longwell said before, it's not going to be a big process to pave that into a two-way, and it's actually, I don't think it's a problem as it is now. I foresee it in the future as the development becomes greater downtown and with the arena, but I don't think that's an expensive project, and I don't think people should have to pay 2% more tax to shop at that unknown retail space that we still don't know who's going to go in there. And I'm also very frustrated in the sense that that retail space could have gone into the Meads building. And I'm also frustrated in the sense that this CID and this tax abatement proposal came before the city council before it did the historic board, when it was already on that, and it had to go through that first. So as Sharon said, there needs to be some better dialogue and there needs to be some better protocol in how this takes place, because it needs to involve, these historic buildings need to be on early in the process. They should not have already had a proposal to do a CID and a tax abatement and all this when the building itself was not even approved to be demolished. I can't believe that that was heard before the historic board. So I have a lot of frustrations in this. I have frustrations with the developer. I have frustrations with the unknowns and the incorrect numbers and the building being gone. I have a lot of frustrations overall. And I think there's just a lot of questions that still need to be answered. And I don't think they're very forthcoming with it. And I think it's a big gamble to make a decision based on unknown answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
Christopher Parashow, 311 South Exposition, District 4. I echo a lot of the concerns Kathy just expressed. I'm highly disappointed with the action that the council just took in the previous item. And I find it interesting that now not only do we get to lose a historic building, but now the taxpayers are going to be asked to give up a public parking lot and possibly pay for the redoing of a street in addition to what we're losing from our historic perspective. How much are the taxpayers going to be put on the hook continually by the city council over and over and over again? The developer already has a controversial thing going with Knopfsker Park, which you guys approved, and now you're doing this. So the disappointment is wide and far and expanding with almost every single action taken. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Seeing.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Corb Maxwell, Pulcinelli Law Firm, again, appearing on behalf of TGC 125. Again, Quentin Ellis, with President of Construction and Development for TGC, is here with me today. I would just say I believe we have followed all city policy, have gone through, worked with your staff collaboratively on this, and worked out a package that is the bare minimum to end up making Class A mixed-use development happen in the core downtown portion of a city. We are talking about 70,000 square feet, new build, and that's not easy. That takes work, that takes effort, that takes investment from the private side and investment via the public side, and that happens all over this country. And your city is doing it appropriately by abating some of the taxes for this future development. The city is not making an investment specifically in the project. They are abating those future taxes. And importantly, we continue, and it was negotiated that we continue to pay a pilot of the $35,000 of taxes that are currently on the site for the current TGC building that will also be demolished in this process, that all of those taxes will stay and continue. Then we will not abate any of the retail taxes. So those additional taxes that will be generated from the retail development will all go into the public coffers. The money that will be needed for street improvements to create a two-way street on Emporia is being provided through the developer's purchase of the city lots and the 10% that we're providing from the CID. So I believe the city's making an incredibly prudent investment here in a public-private partnership that is advancing the ball of downtown Wichita. We stand in the council's hands. We ask for your vote on this. We believe it's an important project, and it will continue the momentum of downtown. It will continue what we started with NAFSCAR Park and the Spaghetti Works and the mixed-use project over there, and we think it will make a stronger Wichita and a stronger downtown. With that, I would stand for any questions, Mayor, that you or the council may have, but appreciate your time and attention to this matter and hope for your vote.
Questions? None. All right, any other speakers? Seeing no other speakers, we'll bring the discussion back to the bench. And I know there was a lot said, and I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Cindy Claycomb to address some of those questions that were presented.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Scott, I have some questions to help clarify some of the comments that were made today. First of all, the cost-benefit analysis. I actually checked these with you, and these are correct numbers and will be monitored at 5 years. Can you explain the employment numbers and all of that?
Sure. When we do a cost-benefit analysis for any project, obviously we work with the applicant, whether it's a developer or with an individual business, to fill out a cost sheet that WSU provides for us, capital investment, number of new jobs, average salary, taxes, if they're going to continue to pay a pilot, those type of things. WSU creates a cost-benefit analysis among those and kicks that back to us. We are one of the only cities that has the threshold of 1.3. We look at it ideally not just for the city, but also for our partners, whether it's the county or the state or the school district. And based on those numbers, generally gives us an indication whether the project meets those minimum criteria required for the city. So the 25 jobs are net new jobs. So if we'll just use myself for Rigby Enterprises. We're here in the city. We want to come to that facility. They can choose to put us in that facility, but unless I grow net new from when I came into that building, TGC would not be able to claim that as a net new job for the 5-year review. The 5-year review is just like we do any other business or applicant. If they said they're going to create that at year 5, they do not. The city has the option to either rescind that abatement or reduce it based on the council's decision.
So that means that if a company that's already in the city moves there, they can't use those jobs as part of this.
Yeah, it's only net new from moving into the business. So if the business moved in and had 10 employees, and at year 5 they had 25, TGC could count those 15. This deal is strictly with TGC, not for any individual business. Again, our focus was to create Class A office space in order to attract net new jobs to the community.
Thank you. My second question has to do with the abatements and all of that. And we have a projection on the tax dollars that will flow into the city. Do you happen to have that with you?
It would be in that cost-benefit analysis that you saw.
Right.
And I think we put those up on the screen, if I can go back. So we can start with CID. You'll see the maximum reimbursement, which is based on their estimated cost of construction, as well as their price per square foot they believe that the market could bear. And so the maximum reimbursement would be $2.2 million. Obviously, the city would receive 10% of that to go to the city's needs within that CID boundaries. It could be for the restriping, the new signals, conversion of Emporia, as well as pavement maintenance ongoing if there's leftover funds to do things. If we want to resurface the remaining city lot within that CID, we could. That goes for the full 22 years. If we scroll forward to...
What I'm really asking about, Scott, is they're still going to be paying taxes.
Correct.
That's what I'm at. So
yes,
they're making...
So anything that's sitting there currently out there today, they will still be required to through that pilot. So there's no taxes that are being withheld now that we're doing this from existing tax base.
Right. And the retail is prohibited from
Correct.
a property tax abatement.
Correct. So any future development, so if they wanted to take their surface parking down the line and do new development, that would not be abated, whether it's retail or office or commercial use, because that's not part of this initial IRB issuance.
Right. So we're already, the taxes we're getting, we will continue to, the taxes that are being paid, we will continue to get those.
Correct.
And additional taxes.
Correct.
Okay. And then my let's see. And then I have a question. There's a little bit of question about the turning Emporia into a two-way street.
Correct.
And whether that's going to be done or not. And my understanding, that's really up to the city if we want to do that or not, not whether the developer wants to do
Correct.
that
They've
or
made
not.
that request. On the surface, we said we're going to look at it. We think that's a good opportunity. I think you're aware we have a study going on for our downtown places, and it looks at streets. We have identified that with the success of St. Francis, I think that was converted. We have a lot of the businesses in the downtown that see that conversion and like to see that continue, because as most industry experts would say, one-way creates so much traffic, but once you have two-way, it opens up an additional level of new interest on the streets. So the idea of converting Emporia is attractive to us. We've identified potentially that segment from either First or Second down to Waterman. Waterman, because of the interest of getting two-way down to the interest arena to provide better traffic flow, as well as generating more interest for commercial or office or even residential use along Emporia.
Thank you. That's all my questions for right now, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Bluebow.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my question is this pay-as-you-go, or is the city out any money up front here before any of these CIDs or anything are collected?
Mayor, Councilmember Bluebow, the city is not out any dollars on this. It's just like any other industrial revenue bond that Tim spent the whole morning talking to you guys. It's a way for them to receive a tax abatement on future development. So again, to Councilmember Claycombs, there's no reduction or removal of existing tax base. It's all future benefit. The CID is pay-as-you-go. So if people come to choose and utilize that retail space and willingly choose to spend their dollars there, then those dollars will be retained not only to the developer, but also to the city, to receive the city's portion.
Retain and reimbursed.
Reimbursed, yes, correct.
Okay.
Vice Mayor, did you have some questions?
Not a question, but a comment, so I can say
Okay. You said you don't have a comment now?
No, I do have a comment. I didn't know if we were still doing questions.
So
I can wait.
We can still have questions interjected at any time, so.
All right. You're fine, Scott. You can sit down. I have no questions for you.
So why are you validating Scott? James, you had a question?
Yeah, I do have a question. Scott, so I want to make sure the job numbers that we're talking about are only the 25 net new jobs within the cost benefit analysis. We're not counting any other jobs within that cost benefit analysis.
No.
So any that may be somewhere else within the city, I mean, what is
Any
the total
existing job
number?
within the city, whether it's within a certain tenant or not, has no bearing on this cost benefit analysis. It's all net new.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Other questions? Seeing none, Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just comment quickly. So the earlier action on the historic use of the property, I voted yes on that because I believe there is a higher and best use of that property. It certainly is a booming area. It's prime property right in our corridor, and it needs to be developed beyond what it is, especially to create more density and economic diversity. That said, I struggle with the high value of the incentives that are on this project. When you include the property tax abatement, the sales tax abatement, and then the CID, you're looking at $5.5 million of a $20 million project. And in a free market environment, I really struggle with that. I'd like to be able to see this project done without the incentives. I know that's a policy that we have, that we allow these incentives. And then you include a questionable use on the CID. I mean, Emporia as a two-way street has not been in our capital plan at all. And so it looks just like it's a place to find a way to spend the money. And so for those reasons, I struggle with this, and I'm going to have a hard time approving it.
Other questions? Councilmember Claycomb?
I just have a comment to make on CIDs, because I also would like it if we could do this project without incentives. But I have looked at the CID policy to understand that whether this project meets those criteria that we have set forth in our policy. And I believe that this project meets all of those criteria. Our policy actually talks about the central business district as a reason to do CID, and I think obviously this project falls into that. So I echo the Vice Mayor's concern that I would love to do these projects without CIDs. I think at some point we'll want to have a policy discussion on CIDs to maybe tighten that up a little bit if we want to over time. But at this point in time, I think that it easily falls within the policy that we have established. Thank you.
So it certainly falls into the allowable usage, and most developers would argue that Wichita has always been more restrictive on many of the tools that we have available to us from the state, but we have chosen to tighten those tools down because our communities kind of demanded that we oftentimes be more restrictive, and that's a difficult balance. I don't disagree. We struggle when we have these kinds of issues come before us, and boy, don't we wish everything that came before us was a simple, easy decision, and they're not. And we have always had to balance our downtown development quite often with dollars that typically are included to find parking solutions. And many times we spend an upwards of tens of millions of dollars to find some of those parking solutions. We've done it on numerous occasions in the core of the city because urban environments are certainly unique from the green spaces that are very attractive when cities can spread out, and we have lots of land in Kansas. If you want to build in green spaces, we have land for you, but that's not always the best option. And oftentimes it creates more hardships on cities when we have to spend dollars for infrastructure to get out to those greenfield developments. And so we have been encouraging more density in the core of our city, and this is a great example of encouraging density in the core of the city, but balancing that with tools available to us that other communities are using. When we brag about some of the cities that we sometimes get an opportunity to go visit, they're using those tools to create that environment and the density that we keep saying, boy, we sure wish Wichita had that. But we're incredibly hesitant to use those tools at the end of the day. And this one is difficult. This one's extremely difficult. I've said before, at some point in time, we're finally going to reach a place in Wichita's history where people truly are begging to develop in our city. We're getting there, but we're not quite there. So how do we balance that? And so I struggle with this one too. It's a very, very difficult decision as we try and grow our community. I suppose the thing that helps is we have pilot projects, and when people talk about pilot, they think it's something innovative. It's payment in lieu of taxes. So we require people to continue to pay their taxes through what we call the pilot, payment in lieu of taxes, so that they don't get the advantage of abating all of their properties. And we don't put ourselves in a situation where we have declining revenue. We're actually going to grow our revenue opportunities immediately as they start building, because they're going to pay in lieu of taxes, and the new space is going to get added onto the tax rolls on top of that. So that's helpful. And it's helpful that we're more restrictive with some of these tools and require pay-as-you-go on some of those other things. I would like to see this developer work a little closer with the Historic Preservation Board to try and mitigate some of those issues on the building facade and some other things that would maybe help be a better fit into this historic area where we are making significant changes in the landscape. I think they have the ability to do that. I think they're willing to do that, and I think it certainly could be something that we'll appreciate in this community for hopefully decades to come. With all of that being said, it's still a very, very difficult decision to say, yeah, we'll let you have this incentive and that incentive and continue, and they're not easy decisions. And every time that we have to sit up here and make a decision, whether it's for or against, we know that someone in the community is going to be unhappy with us. And we struggle with that too, because we have plenty of people that look at a variety of things that we have to vote on and just hope that they can understand and appreciate the dilemma that sometimes we have up here when we vote on these kinds of things. So as much hesitation as I have and angst that I have at moving this forward because of the way that we're using those tools, I'm going to follow the lead of the council member that's been working on this in this district for some time and working closely with the developers and the investors, but certainly not an easy decision by any stretch. So, Councilmember Claycomb, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that we close the public hearings, place the ordinance on first reading, and approve development agreement for Douglas and Emporia project and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Cast your vote. The motion passes 5-2. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Approval of development agreement with Fireworks LLC for development of the Topeka Street Firehouse.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the City Council. Mark Elder with the Office of Economic Development. The item before you is the sale agreement as well as the development agreement for the Topeka Street Firehouse on South Topeka. Starting earlier this year, the City Council went out with the RFP to sell and redevelop this property. Received 5 responses, and then in September of this year, the City Council accepted the proposal from Commerce Street Development Partners, who are operating under Fireworks for this project, and directed staff at that time to negotiate the sale and development agreement for this project. The proposal from Fireworks would be to convert that fire station into a shared makerspace that would provide a shared hourly, weekly, and monthly leases, as well as create a neighborhood coffee shop and provide activity that would extend the Commerce Street Arts District and Interest arena activity to this portion of the area. They've also been working very hard with the other property owners in the area to kind of come up with a larger plan for development around that area where there's a lot of open space parking to continue development. Here's a rendering of what they're proposing for the exterior. You can kind of see there's some seating outside for part of that coffee shop that they're proposing. An overhead view that shows the shared workspace, some of the private office and meeting areas in the middle of the building. You can sort of see in this one that they are reusing those garage doors that were on the exterior of the building as wall separators in there, and then they're going to make replicas for the exterior to provide better insulation for the building. You can see those better in this rendering of the project with where you can see those garage doors they're representing and how that workspace inside the fire station would work. As far as the development and the agreement itself, the developer is agreeing to pay $100,000 for the purchase of that building, as well as convert the building to that shared office space per their proposal. They plan to complete that conversion within 12 months from the purchase, with a minimum investment of $750,000 to convert this building. As well as that, they do commit to the city's standard use restrictions for any property that's sold by the city, as well as for this project, since it's expected to be a catalytic effect for the area. For the first 5 years of the use, they are restricted to retain their tenants and uses to users that are of a catalytic effect. So there are additional uses that are restricted for those first 5 years that would not provide kind of that office space that they're proposing. With that, we do have representatives of the development team in the audience, and I stand for any questions as well.
Questions? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. And this is at least a case where we are saving an old building and providing it new life, and should be an exciting piece in the fabric of that whole area. And we'll turn it over to Councilmember John, well, first, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to point out this is another booming area south of the Commerce Street District where a lot of activity has been seen in the last few years, and this is a project that's not asking for any incentives. So it can be done. Thank you.
Other than an attractive sell price. But that's really not an incentive. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I too like to say that this is an awesome opportunity with the historical site, and I'm looking forward to the new use in the area. With that, I would move that we take the staff recommended action.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item.
2019 contract renewal with Visit Wichita.
Mayor, Council, John D'Angelo, Arts and Cultural Services. What's before you today is the 2019 Visit Wichita contract. Again, it helps to improve our transparency and accountability, outlines responsibilities, and identifies some new performance expectations. Some of the significant booked 2018 include the Jugglers Association, which will be July 21, Society of Decorative Painters, the American Diver and Traffic Safety, Aerospace and Industries Association, the Short Wing Piper Club, the Midwest Pacific Synchronized Skating Championship is another significant event that was booked by Visit Wichita. Conventions booked, 19 was the National Basketball Tournament, Women's Division I Basketball Championship was another one they've been able to get, the Pro Football Hall of Fame. There's significant conventions that have been held throughout 2018 that they've been able to book, including obviously the NCAA championship that was here, first round. I'm happy to go over these. I know Susie Santos is here, so she'll speak to a lot of these. The Convention and Promotion Contingency Fund is outlined here to show how those funds are going to be distributed. About $12,500 for community events, $7,000 for national sponsorship. Regional conventions, 25. State convention scholarships, $12,000. Sports sponsorships, $88,000. Potential new requests, about $8,000. And then the city keeps a reserve of $20,000, which makes up the $150,000 contingency fund. Funds come from the 6% transient guest tax. Collections are about $2.5 million. Maybe reimbursed 150 of the convention promotion contingency funds. City agrees to match dollars raised over $200,000, not to exceed $100,000. I'm happy to stand for questions, but I'll turn it over to Susie.
Thanks, John. Good morning, Mayor, council members, city manager. I'm Susie Santo, President and CEO of Visit Wichita. We're at 515 South Main Street. At Visit Wichita, we have the honor and privilege of marketing our great city to potential visitors, really with one goal in mind. We want to attract more visitors to Wichita and ultimately more dollars into our city. Our experienced team targets potential meetings and conventions and sporting events through many efforts, including extensive sales calls and trade shows, advertising, PR efforts, and ultimately we want to bring the planner to Wichita, show off our great city, and then we hope that makes their decision easy to choose Wichita. As John mentioned, this past year we had some successes that we're really proud of. There's a couple I want to chat with. When you looked at that list and you saw, yes, we're bringing the International Jugglers Association, their annual festival, to Wichita. I know you're wondering, what in the heck is that? 500 of the world's best jugglers will be coming to Wichita. We've never hosted it before, so how fun is that going to be for this week-long festival? They bring their families in from all over the world. We'll get to showcase all the great things. They typically partake in a lot of our activities, but also not only are they going to be at Century 2, but other venues throughout the city, so residents will get out and be able to enjoy some awesome juggling. Also, in addition, we're really excited that for the first time ever, Wichita has been selected to host, as John mentioned, the 2022 NCAA Division I Women's Basketball Championship Regional Rounds. So we're going to have the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 right here in Wichita. So imagine those athletes when they go, the buzzer goes off and the winning team, they charge the floor and they cut down the nets. That winning team is going to the Final Four. We've never had that here in Wichita, so we're really thrilled about that. And last Friday, you might have heard the announcement we're excited to make in partnership with a few of our other local organizations, that the Pacific Coast Midwest Synchronized Sectional Championships will be returning. So taking advantage of Interest Bank Arena and the great 3 sheets of ice that we have. So in addition to bringing in groups and sporting events, we also get to market to leisure visitors through our advertising, leisure commercials, television, radio. We are currently going through our year-end advertising effectiveness, so we understand the ROI. We should have that in about a month, and we'll make sure we get that back out to the council. But when we look at 2017, for every dollar we spent on leisure, we drove just under $53 in return on investment. So it's really important as we continue to be most effective and efficient in our spend. I've talked in the past, and as I've chatted with each of you throughout the year, we've had significant increase in the number of new hotels opening in Wichita. Again, exciting time for Wichita and for our visitors with all these options. But as I mentioned, again, they don't fill themselves, and our efforts, I think, are more important now than ever. We've got to continue to drive visitors, dollars, fill those hotel rooms. Looking ahead to 2019, we're going to continue to showcase Wichita as the must-visit destinations, not only for a weekend getaway, but for groups and sporting events. But specifically Q2, I want to make sure and put out the invite now for everybody to come on out to North Rock Lanes. It is time. It seems like years. It's been years since we won this opportunity, but they are coming. The United States Bowling Congress is hosting the Women's Championship, celebrating their 100th year. And we are a bowling capital of the country, as we like to call ourselves. They will be here. Imagine tens of thousands of bowlers and their fans at North Rock Lanes, April, May, June, 3 months of bowlers. So again, great for the community, great for the residents to get out and enjoy some wonderful bowling. And if you are so, unfortunately, only you, Councilmember Claycomb, would actually be able to qualify for the women's bowling. But if there's anybody watching that wants to put together a bowling team, you can enter and join in on this event. So again, thank you to the council. Mayor, really appreciate your vision. I know just sitting today, you guys are always faced with a lot of tough decisions, but we admire and respect your vision, especially when we look at what you're doing for events or developments such as the new ball diamond. Not only is that great for residents, but it's initiatives and vision like that that will continue to position us to attract visitors for decades to come. So thank you for that. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Now, if you could combine synchronized juggling with bowling.
Work on that.
That could be something special.
I'd like to see that.
We'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item?
Kathy Camden again, District 1. I would like to say that I appreciate Visit Wichita. I went to the synchronized skating last year. It was great. I'm glad to see them coming back. I think a lot of people didn't realize the revenue that actually brought to our city. I met a lot of people, a lot of families, and that's one thing they don't realize is that a lot of these people were younger, and so they brought their parents and their brothers and sisters with them. So there was a lot of people staying in our hotels and visiting here, everything for a week. So I see the value in Visit Wichita, and I'm glad. I love our city, obviously, and I'm glad to have people come here. I'm not asking that you not renew their contract. However, I would ask you to encourage them to keep and obtain our jobs here locally. In October of this year, they hired an outside firm in Kansas City to represent our advertising, and there were many local bidders, advertising firms here that could have handled the job, I think, very competently and very well. So I'm very disappointed to see that a Visit Wichita organization, while we're trying to bring revenue and bring money into our city, that we're turning around and taking our jobs and sending money elsewhere to Kansas City. So that's all I'd like to do, is just remind the organization that we need to keep our money here as much as possible, and to appreciate the skills and the level of quality that we have here in our workers and in our creative staff in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Any further discussion? Councilmember Claycomb?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. One is I just want to thank staff and Visit Wichita for really looking at the new performance criteria for 2019. I think that's a real benefit to us as a council to have truly outcome measures, and so I really appreciate the work that was done on that. And I think that's all. Thank you.
I appreciate you bringing that up, because we do obviously concern ourselves with true outcomes measures, and certainly want to hold ourselves and others accountable for the dollars that we often get scrutinized for. So appreciate you mentioning that. If there's no other comments or questions, I would move that we approve the contract.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Design build agreement for entertainment venue and multi-sport stadium.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council members, Paul Gunzelman, Public Works and Utility. I'm ready to talk a little bit about baseball this morning, specifically the design build agreement for the entertainment venue and multi-sport stadium. As you know, the location of the site is near Maple and Sycamore, northeast quadrant. The site looks quite a bit different today. They have made substantial progress on the demolition of the existing stadium. As I drove by yesterday on my way to work, they were most of the stadium was down, and they had been working on the office space where the team offices were. That was, I think there was only one wall standing yesterday morning. I plan to go back out this afternoon to see what other progress has been made. The project includes construction of an entertainment venue and multi-sport stadium to meet AAA standards and serve as home facilities for an affiliated team. The stadium will consist of a minimum of 10,000 seats, and that would be a combination of fixed seats, berm areas, party areas, and group areas, 15 to 18 suites, concession space needed to meet minor league standards as well as Pacific Coast League standards, team facilities, including locker rooms, training areas, and ancillary facilities, team store, merchandising, office space, press facilities, state-of-the-art scoreboard, sound system, playing field and lighting. Hall of Fame Museum will be part of that. And it has to have the flexibility to host other sporting events such as high school football, soccer, outdoor concerts, festivals, community events. The project also includes final siting of the stadium and platting and zoning of the stadium area. Due to the March 15th, 2020 deadline, and for the need for the stadium to be ready to play ball April 1st of 2020, The design-build service delivery method was utilized for this project. It is a system in which the design and construction services are contracted by a single team, and the approach reduces delivery schedule of the project by overlapping the design and construction phases of the project. The selection process, the request for proposals for the design-build services was issued September 27th. A pre-proposal meeting was held in this room on October 12th, and then the proposals were due October 31st, 2018. 3 proposals were received from reputable teams. And on November 14th, all 3 teams were interviewed by the selection committee, made up of 3 members from the City of Wichita and 3 members from the AAA affiliated baseball team, known as the Oversight Committee, per the Ballpark Development Agreement. Teams were evaluated on the following criteria: experience and capabilities, project approach, implementation and schedule, EBE, DBE participation, fee cost, and proposal. The team of J.E. Dunn, EB, Schaefer Johnson Cox Fry, the DLR Group, and PEC was selected based on the criteria listed in the RFP, as well as their overall team presentation, knowledge of MILB standards, knowledge of local conditions, including knowledge of groundwater conditions and local subcontractor capacity, and their experience working with local governmental agencies. I will highlight a few of the items within the agreement before you today. AIA Document 141 identifies design criteria for the project, MILB facility standards and Pacific Coast League standards, identifies a budget of $75 million for the stadium and $2 million for adjacent street and infrastructure improvements. Initial phasing of project and establishment of multiple guaranteed maximum prices for components of the project, beginning with excavation and underground utilities. Other items addressed within the agreement are providing progress reports, schedules, submittals, warranty, permitting, payments, schedule of values, etc. Exhibit 1 of the agreement are the owner stadium requirements, and those were the items that I talked about earlier, the number of seats, number of suites, etc. Exhibit 2 is the MILB facility standards, and the design will address forthcoming changes to those standards. Exhibit 6 are the Phase 1 and Phase 2 activities. If approved today, during the next few weeks, some items we will be working on are identifying soft costs in order to determine remaining dollars for bricks and mortar. The team will be conducting survey work, geotechnical work, siting of the stadium, utility planning, begin the platting and zoning process. In addition, the Oversight Committee is scheduled to meet mid-December to further define stadium requirements such as concourse widths, seat widths, number of fixed seats, number of points of sales, and along with the design build team, begin costing out stadium and the guaranteed maximum price. That will be presented at a future council date. It is recommended that the City Council approve the design build agreement with the team of J.E. Dunn, EB, and authorize the necessary signatures. The J.E. Dunn, EB team is here today, and I will turn it over to them as they have a few slides that they want to present as well, and then we can stand for questions.
Any questions before the team shares their information? Doesn't appear to be any.
Good morning, Mayor, members of council. I'm Don Barnum, the sports studio leader with DLR Group Architecture, and I'm here speaking on behalf of the J.E. Dunn and EB Design Build team regarding our experience with baseball stadium projects. Our team includes EB with 80 years of building experience here in Wichita, SJCF with 60 years of design experience as an architect here in Wichita, including X Stadium, which is a project they did with EB, and PEC, a 50-year-old engineering firm here with 220 professionals in the city. And J.E. Dunn, the 11th largest builder in the country with over $2 billion in sports facility construction experience. And DLR Group with 30 years of baseball stadium design experience. This team has collaborated together on projects around the region. And I'm going to click through some slides here, not specific to my comments, but demonstrating some of the experience of this team, as well as what some of the exciting potential is for the stadium here in Wichita. So our team has experience on 20 new ground-up baseball stadiums for Major League and Minor League Baseball. We've also renovated 5 additional projects for Major League Baseball and spring training facilities. In addition to that, we've done 11 major college stadiums, some of them larger than the scale of project that we're talking about here. But no firm is greater than the individuals that make up the team. We have promised to the City of Wichita in our proposal letter that our team will include very deeply experienced individuals. Myself, I have 30 years of experience in sports facility design specifically, as well as most of my colleagues on this team. That's all we've done in our careers. I have personally done 20 baseball stadiums, 9 of them for Major League or spring training teams. Our lead designer is Bob Carlson. He's got over 30 years of experience as well in 20 baseball stadiums, 5 of them for Major League Baseball and 15 of them in Minor League Baseball. Our number 2 designer, Greg Garlock, has 25 years experience in 32 baseball stadiums. And at the risk of being redundant, our team, this story goes on. 30 plus years for Tom Tingle, who's our project director, 29 professional baseball stadiums. And our lead project architect with 30 years experience and 33 professional baseball stadiums. From our build team, Randy Bradar, the J.E. Dunn project executive, has worked on 2 Major League Baseball stadiums. Scott Sherry, who's our project leader, 7 minor league baseball stadium projects. All told, that's over 140 baseball stadiums and over 200 years combined experience, specifically working on sports and baseball. So I would submit that this team is highly qualified, deeply experienced, and that we'll strive to create a great facility here for the City of Wichita. Thank you.
Thank you all very much, and we truly appreciate you sharing with our public the vast experience that you have. And as some have heard, there was some folks in the community that questioned whether you had enough experience to build something truly special in Wichita, because we're difficult criticizing people here, and we want to make sure we have the best. And so we truly appreciate the work you've done. When one of the owners heard about some questions surrounding the team's history with building specifically baseball complexes, his initial reaction was he laughed. He said, this team has as much experience as generally anyone we've seen and worked with in the country. And specifically, he named some of your partners that he is very fond of and appreciates the long time dialogue and communications and experience that he's had with your team. And certainly we're looking forward to designing and building something pretty magnificent in Wichita, Kansas. So we appreciate you sharing. Anyone have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Paul, was there anything more to your presentation? All right. Councilmember Blueball.
Thanks, Mayor. And I've had one question asked of me several times, and I just want to clarify it with Paul. All three teams met the criteria before we ever went into the interviews, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there was no reason anyone would have been there if they couldn't have fulfilled, correct? Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, and I think the minimum criteria in this case was, have you had any experience in building at least 3 minor or major league stadiums? And the fact that they've built 20 from the ground up, and as you've heard, been involved in multiple projects, I think gets us past that minimum. And the fact that we had 3 people from the baseball team that have been involved in baseball operations for a very long time, it was valuable to our team, the team that was making the recommendations moving this forward, that we heard from our friends that have been involved in baseball for 25 years, because most of us have not, with the exception, Councilmember Claycomb is a baseball aficionado. And so I will stop talking and let Councilmember Claycomb make some comments.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say that what's in the agenda report about the reasons that we chose this team were very important, about the cohesive team, and they spoke to the due diligence that they've completed. About they were the only team that talked about the groundwater conditions, and then they really spoke about local subcontractors and the ability to marshal that. And they were the only team that I recall that actually talked about community input on this project. None of the other teams spoke about that, and I find that very important, that this is going to be a community asset, not a city council asset. And they really talked about that and talked about the importance of meeting the timeline and staying within our budget. So those were really important to me. And I really appreciate that, having served on the Oversight Committee. Paul, I have one question for you, and I know this is kind of in the weeds, but on page 3 of the the A141 document, it talks about the project site, and I believe that I'll let you find that. And it's down under 1.1.3.
Yes.
Talks about the project site. So I think that the site that we're talking about for this particular project is not bounded by Douglas, but bounded by Texas Street. Isn't that correct?
That has not been determined quite yet, so
I think
that's part of the siting, but the stadium
So we're not
itself,
talking about the baseball development agreement for the baseball team owners. We're talking about the site development for the baseball stadium. It's not going to extend to Douglas.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think that needs to, and I think
So I agree with Councilmember Claycomb, that should get shifted in the document to read Maple to Texas, McLean to Sycamore. So that there's no confusion on what the footprint is for the stadium site itself.
I'll note that.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
So we will go out for public comment at this point. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the council on this agenda item?
Good morning, Mayor, Council. My name is Mike Gibson. I'm Executive Vice President of Associated General Contractors of Kansas. We're the Chamber of Commerce for the Kansas construction industry, representing 325 Kansas construction firms and their 9,000 employees. I was before you here a few weeks ago talking about the value of construction to this community. This project, you have three tremendous teams that submitted before this council, all of which had brought great quality to the table. But most importantly, all three brought a high element of leveraging the $80 million plus that will be on this project, really almost $350 million worth of economic impact on the front end of the construction of this project, which I know all of you know the value of that. But I think this particular project, one of the things that intrigues the construction industry is one of the things I shared with you a couple of weeks ago. The younger generation in this community is looking very strongly at your leadership in terms of leveraging the talents that are contained within the Wichita metro area. I know no better project than this particular project that's going to attract the youth for decades to come. And the business community and the construction industry can project out to that younger generation that it was local construction firms, contractors, subcontractors, specialty contractors, and suppliers that are going to build this facility and be able to project that we are a very talented community that can deliver on time and on budget for these particular projects. So we appreciate your leadership. We appreciate your due diligence in looking at those three quality teams, and know that as we move forward, we'll all look back on this project with a lot of pride and know that our youth will be able to turn to this and say, I want to stay in Wichita and continue to build on my personal and professional career. Thank you very much for your leadership.
Thank you, Mike. Other speakers? We can't get the downtown partnership to say how cool this is? No, I'm not going to beg you to get up. I'm good. So seeing no other speakers, we'll bring the discussion back to the bench. And again, I obviously couldn't be more pleased with where we're at today in terms of truly building something that's going to be a catalyst and a transformational piece to our community for generations to come, and believe that we did select one of the absolute best teams that could not only be innovative but build it on time and under budget, and have full confidence in the team that we have recommended that we're going to vote on here today, and certainly appreciate you sharing with the rest of the community your vast experience that will make a difference, that will be a game changer for our community. And so it truly is a place where it's taken us a long time to get to. This is something that I've been working on nearly as long as I've been mayor of this city, and it's been challenging at times, trying to figure out how we can navigate all of the different things that we needed to navigate to get us to this point. Certainly has not been easy, but you know, if it was easy, any of these people could be mayor today. I'm kidding. Any of them could. So appreciate this moving forward. And speaking of capable, Vice Mayor, you have something to share.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to express my appreciation to the committee for the hard work that you put into making this decision. As someone who served on a selection committee for a very large-scale project, I know how difficult it is to get consensus. That said, couple of things I want to quibble with, and one is that the definition of experience in the construction of a ballpark. I think we could probably debate that. I question whether or not this team has that specific experience in constructing as per the RFP. Secondarily, Councilmember Claycomb pointed out something I was going to address, and that is, I just got this agreement this morning, and she's already found one item that needs correction.
unlike Nancy Pelosi, I don't believe we should pass something just to find out what's in it. I think it's not fair for us to have to go through this document this morning and make a decision on it, especially when talking about a $75 million investment that is the prime space in our city. I'd like to be able to have a week to go through this and look at it before making a decision. I know there's a very tight timeline, and we're trying to do something that hasn't been done before in this city, but I think it merits a one-week extension so we can study this document. Thank you.
Vice Mayor, I appreciate your concern, but I would be hesitant to compare this to the ACA document that was about 1,000 times more voluminous than what the contract is that we have in front of us, which is not that difficult, I think, to get through. But I agree with your concern. Staff's got to do a better job of getting these contracts to us in a timely fashion.
This is the second time on this project.
So
Because the baseball facility agreement, we got that morning as well. And so I'm very frustrated by this.
So we'll remind staff to do a better job at getting these contracts to all of us in a manner that will give us the comfort level to be able to peruse through the contract again. There is obviously a lot of detail in there. The only concern I have at this point in time, and I think that we've been able to make our way through the majority of this contract. I know you've read most of it, and sometimes we like to read these multiple times, but we are on a tight timeline. We have to figure out where home plate's going to be by December 19th, and that really does put a time crunch into getting the team started, and I know they've had some preliminary discussions, but I can appreciate you wanting a week. I'm ready to move forward today just simply because of the tight timeline that they're going to have to deal with, and we don't want to start out in a position that jeopardizes us from reaching the March of 2020 deadline. So I'm not going to support you on delaying it at this point in time, but I can understand your frustration.
Thank you.
Councilmember Clendenin.
Not sure who to direct this to, maybe Paul. In design-build contracts, there are inherent good things and inherent risks that you take when doing a design-build contract. In this case, making sure that we're getting, the best quality, knowing that, something isn't going to be designed to cut corners or save money for those that are building or designing, to make extra profit in this. I'm not suggesting that anybody would intentionally do that, but sometimes there are inherent risks. What are we appointing an owner's rep in this case to just make sure that everything's being looked over?
Yes, I am in the process of working on that right now. We have sent out the request for proposals on that. We had received those. The schedule that I am proposing right now is to have the selection made of that owner's rep by December 14th is what the schedule is right now.
Well, I appreciate that because we are in such a tight timeline, and I know everybody's working very hard and almost overworking themselves, to try to make this thing happen, and it helps me feel more comfortable with doing a DB like this, so I appreciate it. Thanks.
Any other questions? Again, this is a transformational project that's going to impact the entire region, but it does set in Councilmember Blueball's district, and be happy to defer to both Councilmember Blueball and Councilmember Claycomb, who sit on the committee, the selection committee, and allow them to move this process forward.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to take the recommended action to approve the design-build agreement and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion, Vice Mayor?
Yes, I'd like to offer a substitute motion that we delay this decision for 1 week.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to defer this item 1 week. And we will vote on the substitute motion first. And are there any questions on what the substitute motion means at this point? It's a 1-week deferral. Cast your vote on the substitute motion of 1-week deferral. And the motion passes 4-3, so we will defer this item for 1 week. Madam Clerk?
No.
Wasn't it? 4 green? Put the votes back up. So 4 yeas to defer, 3 nays. So the motion for deferral passes 4-3. So we will take this back up next week. All right, Madam Clerk, next item.
CON 2018-37, conditional use amendment to modify operation and site plan for equipment rental business on property zoned, limited commercial, generally located south of West Central Avenue and east of North Mays Road.
Dale Miller, planning staff. The applicant is seeking conditional use approval to permit outdoor vehicle and equipment sales and rental. He primarily does rental. The property is on LC limited commercial zoning. On the zoning map there, you can see that everything that's red is LC limited commercial, the green is general office, and the white is single family SF5. Currently, the property has a protective overlay on the existing LC zoning, and what it says is that it permits vehicle and equipment sales outdoor, provided the sale of vehicles is associated with a legal vehicle repair business. And this particular applicant does not run a vehicle repair business. It is strictly, for the most part, a rental. He does not repair vehicles like the previous occupant did. So they came in for this amendment to the protective overlay to allow them to do the business model that they have. The property is developed with a building designed for vehicle and equipment repair. Let's see here, you can see there's the aerial of it. And there is a 6-foot masonry wall that runs along the east and the south property lines of the application area. And to the east, the land use is a multifamily apartment. And to the south, there are single-family residences. And to the west are other commercial businesses. The one immediately west actually is an AT&T switching station or some sort of communication facility. And then to the north is a strip center retail office combination. When the Planning Commission heard this, it was recommended to approve with the modified conditions that are in your agenda packet 651. One of the clarifications that I need to make is that item 4 says that we'll retain all the provisions of the existing protective overlay. Well, we need to amend that number 4 to say that we're going to retain all the existing provisions of the protective overlay except as modified by the action today, because obviously they wouldn't be able to do what they need to do if we retain everything. Again, there was protest, 25%, which will trigger a 6 out of 7 vote. The protest primarily dealt with the fact that they were concerned with stormwater running off of the property. Apparently, when the building was originally built, they padded up the site to accommodate the building, and so it is now higher, and water, in their view, is running off more than it was before. The screening that I mentioned, the masonry wall on the south and the east, was put in before the padding was put up, and so it doesn't effectively screen as well as one would like. And they were concerned that the applicant had scrap and junk on the property before, and drove by last week and I believe it was gone. But those were the kinds of things that came up at the meeting. The District Advisory Board recommended approval. of the request. And let's see here. The comprehensive plan suggests this is appropriate for commercial uses. And here is the site plan that the applicant has submitted, and it is somewhat hard to see, but one of the concerns that was expressed by the neighbors is in the center southern part of the building, they have a fuel tank that they use to keep their rental equipment fueled up with, and they're concerned that that has not been properly inspected or installed. And so with that, I try and answer questions.
Just a reminder that this is not a public hearing, that we will contain all of the discussion at the bench, and we'll hand this over to Council Member or Vice Mayor Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that fellow council members have been getting emails from neighbors and in the area. I have met with both the applicant as well as neighbors and visited with them. This is one of those, you don't want something like this in your backyard, but if you can, let's find a compromise that works best for everyone. Certainly these are a young starting up business that wants to do right. I think they were not in compliance. They have been made aware of those issues and are taking the step to do it correctly moving forward. One of the big issues that I have learned about is the screening, and it shows on your site plan 12 trees on that southern side, but it did not specify type, size, or variety. So we have agreed, and I've given everyone a document, and I would given this to Dale as well, sharing the size and type of trees that will be on that southern border, larger than what would normally be there, to help with that screening. So combined with that, the MAPC decision and the DAB, I recommend that we adopt, if we're ready for that. If there are any other questions, I'm sorry.
So you can go ahead and make your motion.
Seeing none other, I recommend that we adopt the findings of the MAPC, approve the conditional use as specified by Dale with that fourth condition, and then enter in to the record this specificity of the trees for the site plan, and that we approve the resolution and authorize the necessary signature.
Second. Are there any other questions about the direction that the Vice Mayor has recommended of? If there's no other questions or discussion, no one wanting to defer this for a week?
There it is. There it is.
Vote on.
Can you get that out for me?
Vote on the motion.
Touche.
Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item.
Councilmember appointments and comments.
So I do have a couple of appointments to make today. I have Darrell Kelly to be appointed to the Transit Advisory Board and reappoint Janelle Razuk to the Cultural Funding Committee.
Second.
Wait, are there any other appointments that need to be made? Then I would move that we approve those appointments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Let's vote on those appointments. Motion passes 7-0. In terms of comments, again, want to thank staff for a successful tree lighting ceremony that we held yesterday, or Sunday actually, in some difficult cold conditions, but we had a significantly large crowd there, especially considering the conditions, and I think people had a very enjoyable tree lighting experience along with a visit from Santa Claus, and so we certainly appreciate the magical time that this time of year brings us. And Councilmember Johnson, did you have something?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just piggybacking off what the Vice Mayor said earlier, although I know a lot of what's in that contract, I would just prefer in the future having at least 24 hours to review something like that before we vote on it, not the morning of. That's all.
All right. Any other questions, comments? I move we adjourn today's council meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0.